It is 4 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Please stand to sing O Canada. We'll begin with the roll call.
Mayor Sue Patterson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Warren Dickert,
Present.
Councillor Harold Fleet,
Present.
Councillor Dave Hawking,
Present.
Councillor Carol Hudson, Councillor Brandon Cable,
Present.
Councillor Susan Sackle.
Present. Thank you. All members are present and accounted for. The land acknowledgement. As we work toward reconciliation with Indigenous people, we begin our meeting today by respectfully acknowledging that we are situated on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. So welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, July 15th, 2024. Good afternoon, council, staff, guests, the viewing public, and the media. Council, does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or a conflict of interest? Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make a disclosure with respect to item 8.1 regarding the Hanover Curling Club, as I'm a member of the club and therefore have an indirect interest in the item.
Thank you. And Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also have a disclosure of pecuniary interest 8.1. I do curl at the Hanover Curling Club, so I'll have a pecuniary interest. So thank you.
Thank you. And of course, if one should arise during the meeting, you may declare it then. Item 5 is our agenda additions or deletions. We do not have any. Item 6 is a public meeting. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to consider zoning bylaw amendment file number Z224 at 854 24th Avenue. And I will ask the clerk for the method of notice of the meeting and the dates of that notice.
Notice for the public meeting was circulated to all commenting agencies and posted on the Town of Hanover website on June 19th, 2024, in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. Circulation of the notice of public meeting included abutting property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. The application was reviewed by the Planning Advisory Committee on June 11th, 2024. Comments were received from County of Grey Planning Department and Mark McKenzie.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO, to give an overview of the item. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. On May the 10th of 2024, the town received an application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment from the owner of 854 24th Ave. The subject lands were previously granted a consent on May the 30th, 2024 by way of application B7-24. for the purposes of lot creation with the ultimate intention on developing purpose-built rentals on this said property. The proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw seeks to rezone the subject lands from an R1 designation to a site-specific R3 zone. This change would permit the construction of 2 purpose-built rental buildings, one a triplex and one a 4-unit townhouse. The owner has additionally requested that the group dwellings on this adhere to the regulations outlined in section 10.3 for triplex dwellings, as all the provisions outlined in that section are being met. As the clerk mentioned, Planning Advisory Committee heard this on had previously heard this following a delegation from Dana Kiefer, the senior planning at Cobite Engineering, who is here today to outline her report briefly and answer any questions you may have. This application is in keeping with the provincial policy statement for residential intensification. This also assists in the town in reaching our 25 per unit hectare density requirements, as you're aware in the county's official plan. The application would better utilize this parcel of land, which currently is zoned as an R1 and could house a single family dwelling as it stands now. With this rezoning, potentially, this would allow for 7 total units. The property is immediately adjacent to the Saugeen Heights Cedar West subdivision, many of those adjacent lands being semi-detached dwellings, triplexes, and towns themselves. There are no financial implications to this report. The link to the strategic plan is balanced growth. And the recommendation is that report PB 17-24, public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment number 3312-14 be received, and that council pass bylaw 3312-24 to rezone the lands described as part of lot 10, concession 1 north of Durham Road and known as 854 24th Ave in the town of Hanover and in the county of Gray, from residential type 1 R1 zone to residential type 3 site specific R3-49 to allow for a group dwelling inclusive of 1 triplex and 1 townhouse. As I mentioned, Dana is here. Comments received to date, if I may, your worship, continue on to those. County comments were received. They were in your package, but they weren't very long, so I will read them here tonight. Please note that Grey County planning staff had reviewed the zoning application. Further comments were provided related to the consent application B724. Further to the previous comments, Grey County planning ecological staff have provided the following comments. The property contains and or is adjacent to significant woodlands, significant wildlife habitat, and potential habitat for threatened and or endangered species. It is Grey County staff's understanding that the proposed development will be located within or adjacent to the previously disturbed lands. As such, it is Grey County staff's opinion that the requirements of the EIS can be waived. It is Grey County staff's understanding stormwater management infrastructure is not needed for this proposal. It is Grey County staff's understanding that the property does not contain protection areas that are subject to polys under the Source Water Protection Act. County staff have no further comments at this time. Please note, paper copy will be filed unless requested. The comments received from neighbor Mark McKenzie. Concerns regarding the zoning bylaw amendment Zen 2-24 to be heard July 15th. Will the cost of the maintenance and installation of the private drive-in entryways for the dwellings be a ratepayer responsibility? Looks like a short street's being added. Item 2, garbage and recycling. Will pickup be at each dwelling or in a central spot? And 3, will the owner of this section have the ability to sever each home and sell a private residence and not be part of the rental agreement? If I can, I would maybe comment on those items. The small private driveway that is shown on the site plan included herein would be the responsibility of the developer. Garbage and recycling would be assumed would be picked up at each individual residence. And know that this is intended to be a single ownership property. perhaps Dana could speak to it further, but I don't think the intent is to go into a plan of condominium. However, that potentially could be an option at a future date. And with that, it may be called Dana to provide a small comment on her justification report that's included herein.
Welcome, Dana.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for having me. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Dana Kiefer. I'm a senior development planner with COBIDE. I've been asked to keep it fairly short this afternoon, which is totally fine by me. Mr. Wilkin did a great job giving you a great overview of the application. The only thing I was going to add was the comments that we received. My understanding is this is going to be severed and sold. At this point, we believe it's going to be a purpose-built rental. The only other option in my mind would be a condominium in the future. Due to the road configuration, 19th Ave curves there. So the entirety of the property doesn't have road frontage, only that one fourplex on the eastern side. So it is a bit of a challenging property if you wanted to separate those buildings. I think really realistically, a condominium is probably the only way you're going to be able to do that in the future. That concludes my presentation, but I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have any, council. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. At this time, I will say that members of the public will now be allowed to speak to the matter. All questions are to be addressed through the chair. If you do have a question, please state your name and address for the record. And if there are any persons present who wish to make written submissions on the proposed bylaw amendment, they should file them now with the clerk to form part of the record. And this is in the event there is an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So I will ask at this time if any members of the public would like to speak or have questions. And I will ask a second time. And third and final time. Seeing none, the public portion is closed and council is permitted to discuss and debate any questions. So we have report PB 1724. And I need a mover and seconder before council discusses. Councillor Sackle and Councillor Fleet. Questions, comments? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Worship. So, Andrew, I'm wondering, am I to understand that the existing dwelling will remain R1 and then the rest of the property will be R3? Is that correct?
Your Worship, yes, that's correct. Now that the severance is, is in place, yes, that is correct.
Anything further, Councillor Hudson? No? Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. Andrew, can you just clarify? So number 2 from Mr. McKenzie about the recycling and the garbage. So is the pickup going to be like curbside collection, like in a regular residential area? Or is this similar to, we would see it like living on 14th Street where it's up to the owner to dispose of the residents' garbage and recycling?
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, in speaking to Hanover Public Works, the intent of this property would probably be kind of at the entrance of that private driveway, similar to what we would see, let's say across from the Kinsman Ball Diamonds or something along those properties. You'll see a collection up at the street with bag tags.
Thank you. And I'm also wondering if we can go back to the discussion around servicing for abutting landowners. And so, of course, we know that Mr. Zettler had filed a letter with the Committee of Adjustment with concerns about servicing to his land, which abuts this property to the north. So just wondering if you can again clarify how the Zettlers will have access to town servicing in the future.
Thank you, Your Worship. The short answer is essentially down the county road, really extending the service beyond the county road. The property to the north, based on the topography, actually sits low. So if there were to be access through this property to say 9th Street, that property sitting lower would essentially have to pump a lot of their sanitary sewage to get to here. So the short answer is for access, like any development, you know, typically as we extend, it's the responsibility of the developer to extend the services or to at least provide go into the town some sort of cost sharing agreement for those services. So the obvious answer is to extend down the county road. Potentially, there's an avenue to extend to the north through the existing subdivision, but that would essentially be to that landowner's advantage to speak to that developer and try to come to an agreement of part lot control or some sort of sanitary easement to allow that.
Okay, but there would never be a situation where that property becomes like an island where it doesn't have access to servicing because the servicing went on the north side of that subdivision to go across the river, or it just didn't extend that far. Like we would have to ensure at some point that if that owner wanted to join, that they would have access to that.
Through your worship, yes, with the county road access, there would always be access for them to provide services onto that property or within areas of that property, however they wish to develop at whenever that time potentially could be.
Excellent, thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Andrew. I'm just wondering, the natural heritage, the property contains significant woodland, significant wildlife habitat and potential habitat. Is Saugeen Valley commented on this, or did I miss something?
Through your worship, no, we received no comments. I mean, large portions of all this area, and there's mention in here of the disturbed area based on the previous EIS that was completed as part of the subdivision agreement. So the concern does not seem to be there at this time.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the application here. You know, it's great to get the intensification up and help our targets. Wondering if there's any discussion or that maybe it's too early in the process as far as affordability and attainable type housing that might be going in there. Is there an opportunity for us to have any influence over that, or is this entirely up to the developer?
Through your worship, I mean, ultimately it's up to the developer. I mean, I guess our influence and through the county level is offering those incentive packages that potentially could make it of interest. I would say it's difficult to find that medium of building that affordable or attainable, certainly new. That's why I kind of continue to say really just adding to the surplus or the amount of units, hopefully just in general helps that affordability. No, ultimately it's up to the developer. My understanding right now is it's looking at a market rate type of rental, but there's nothing in place where we can request that it become attainable or affordable.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of PB 1724? That is carried. Thank you. Item 7 is our health and safety message, and it is brought to us by Councillor Hudson.
July 24th is International Self-Care Day, and it's an opportunity to pause and reflect on our own self-care practices and general well-being. Self-care takes many forms and is any activity you do intentionally to take care of your mental, emotional, and physical health. The benefits of investing in self-care are plentiful and include improved productivity and self-esteem, reduced stress, better physical and mental health, and more generosity and compassion. When you notice your self-care slipping, there are simple things you can do to nurture your well-being, such as schedule time for yourself, prioritize healthy habits, and be kind to yourself. Here are some easy self-care practices you can incorporate into your life. Begin your day with a satisfying activity, such as stretching, enjoying a cup of tea, or meditating. This sets a positive tone for your day. Eat a healthy and nutritious diet. When we eat well, we feel well. Make yourself a priority by learning when to say no to others and put your needs first. Get enough sleep. The average person needs between 7 and 8 hours of sleep each night. And schedule activities that bring you joy, whether it's watching a movie, going for a hike, or catching up with a friend.
Thank you. All very good tips for self-care, something we all need to do more. Item 8 is delegations, and we have two this afternoon. The first one, 8.1, is the Hanover Curling Club, and we have Courtney Mellish here, who is the president of the Curling Club. Welcome, Courtney.
I don't know where this goes to be seen, but that's okay. Thank you, town councilors, staff, Mayor Patterson, residents and community supporters for your time and attention this evening. I am Courtney Mellish. I'm the president of the Hanover Curling Club, and happy to be here to present some things to you. The Curling Club has found itself in some financial strain, with also the potential for some exciting opportunities that we are here to gain support for. So we're going to review who we are, what we offer to the community, who we serve, and what our needs are. So our curling club has been around since 1957. Some may say a staple of downtown. We've had curlers with success at the regional, provincial, and national level. There may be many of you in the room or listening online who've had memories there of your first time on the ice, of curling in a bonspiel or enjoying a home-cooked meal from our kitchen. However, our club and equipment are aging, and we are in need of a new condenser unit. The cost of a condenser unit is more than our current finances allow, and so we are faced with the question of how can we continue. In pursuit of that, we have spent some time observing who we serve in our community. We have curlers ranging from 5 to 85 plus, and some of those curlers are multi-generational within families. We have specific programs for youth, the young at heart, and Special Olympics athletes. Outside of curling, our space is used to celebrate lots of life moments and milestones, baby showers, bridal showers, retirements, big birthdays. We also have several workplaces that have used our space for meetings or also for other celebrations such as Christmas parties. We see ourselves as an inviting place for new residents to town to come and explore not only the sport of curling, but to gain some social members in their new community. We strive to be a place for camaraderie and community, and we want to continue this for generations to come. The problem at hand is our condenser. Those screens just went black, is that? Oh. The problem at hand is our condenser unit. So the condenser unit is part of our ice plant. It has a leak in it. It does function with the leak. However, the lifespan of that is unknown because eventually it will run out and then it will not work. But it's very hard to predict exactly how long the condenser will continue to operate with this leak. We have been informed that it cannot be repaired, that it must be replaced. With no condenser, we have no curling ice and no curling club for any of those activities that were mentioned. Short Cooling Systems is our contractor that we use for management of our ice plant. They are the ones who have provided us a quote on a new condenser unit and have shared that they believe it would be an 18 to 20 week turnaround once we order a new unit to get it to our facility. I can't switch slides, but that's okay. It won't let me. There we go. Now I got it. So here you'll see on the left-hand side, the quote from Short Cooling Systems for a new condenser unit is estimated at $73,000. There would be some additional costs in order to secure the roof that the condenser unit sits on, which is the flat roof just to the left of the curling club entrance. Our financials, our bank balance as of May 31st was sitting at $33,000. Our fiscal year, out of curiosity, is July 31st to July 31st. Our losses to date as of May 31st were also sitting around $31,000. It should be noted that about half of that was from a project we took on in the fall where we replaced all of the lights on the ice surface. However, looking back over the past several years, we believe our operating costs to range from $35,000 to $65,000. Again, some years there's been some other repairs. So with that, however, you can see that all of the money in our bank account is necessary for operating costs and does not allow for any to be spent on a condenser. The condenser is only one piece of our operation. The age of the building and its parts, have us concerned about what could be next. Our ice plant is located underground, and if there were further repairs that were required to that, we worry about what the cost could be. Within our current space, we also feel that there are some limitations on expanding what the curling club has to offer. For example, becoming accessible, or our ice surface is not usable as it stands in the off season. We do not have a cement pad under our ice rink, for example. So some alternatives that we have been working on are, can we top up the leak that we have? Our current contractor has said no. We have asked the question to a couple of other contractors if they could do that for us. However, that would of course be a temporary solution as the leak would still exist. The next question we've asked is, should we or can we replace the whole ice plant itself? Through Short Cooling Systems, we have a quote for the $300,000 that you see as an estimate to get an ice plant that would be self-contained in a C-can unit. There would be additional costs for us to attach that to our building with things like the plumbing and electrical and other construction work. The turnaround on that C-can unit is about 6 months. There are some ice plants in neighboring or regional municipalities that may no longer serve their municipality, and we are in connection with them to see if perhaps a purchase would be reasonable. However, buying a used unit, we have concerns about the longevity and functionality of something that has not been operational currently. And then lastly, here, another alternative to consider is a new build. A community-centered facility that could offer multiple things in one location. This could also be pursued simultaneous to the options discussed above. For a new facility, things to consider are location and how it would affect curling season. If we were to build on our current lot, we couldn't curl there at the same time. Is there other space in the town that could be considered? Are there partners that would want to work with us? The Legion, Golf, Lawn Bowling are some examples. We feel that a new facility would offer many opportunities, not only to continue to serve our community with the things we provide now, curling and a space for all of those other options that we discussed, but a new facility could be built accessible. It could be built with a cement floor that could be used for things such as a hospital gala, weddings, the home and garden show, or other sporting activities in the off season to make the curling club a community-centered facility that runs 12 months of the year. In this suggestion or alternative, we also feel that there are grant and sponsorship opportunities that would be specific to a new build that may not be applicable to simply replacing a condenser unit for a curling club. Regardless of which option we are able to proceed with, we need some funds. That's very obvious. Options for that include grants, debentures, fundraising events, sponsorship, and of course our membership, as all members pay a registration fee. Last year, we had about 74 members with an additional 16 youth members. These numbers are down since COVID, but we have been working to get them back up. That resulted in about $16,000 worth of income through registration fees. As I'm sure you in the room are aware, the town of Hanover has a grant that we feel our project would be acceptable for. On the grant application, our project is would cost more than $5,000. And in that then category, the grant application asks for audited financial statements. Audited financial statements run anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, which are currently outside of our budget. So we do not feel that we would be able to provide those along with our grant application. Of course, a different version of financial statements could be provided. On the grant application, it also suggests for applicants to apply by January 31st, assuming that there will be funds allotted throughout the year. And like an earlier application, there may be funds then. We are concerned that we're now well into July and coming to the table to ask for grant support, and our needs are very great. And so overall, we are wondering if there are any exceptions or special considerations that could be made for the curling club applying for the Town of Hanover grant. There are other grant opportunities that we can pursue. Curl On, which is the Curling Ontario Association, and Curling Canada have some options that we can pursue specifically as a curling club. However, we only have access to those if we become a member, which is going to cost us about $2,400. The Ontario Trillium Foundation exists there, as you know. Grants are not guaranteed, and the timelines change often. We have also run into some grants that require support from the municipality in pursuing their opportunities. And so again, we would ask the council for their support on that. To kind of summarize our situation, we have a condenser unit that needs to be repaired, but we don't want to be blind to the possibility of other opportunities that may serve the curling club and the community of Hanover on a greater scale. For that, we are asking for special consideration for our grant application. We would ask for assistance with promotion and support of fundraising efforts, such as fundraising events, or for example, a letter of support for a different grant application. In addition, we feel that a new facility would be best drawn up with a feasibility study to ensure we are encompassing the community's needs, and we are asking if the council would consider assistance with this. We thank you for your time, and we hope that the Curling Club continues to be a part of our community for a long time. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. Questions, comments for Courtney? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the report, Courtney. What is the actual footprint of the property that the curling club owns there? It's surrounded by parking, but I'm really not sure what portion the curling club owns and what portion might be town or whatever. Can you answer that?
I do not know the exact footprint. I don't know the measurements offhand. The curling club owns 2 lots. One is the one that the building is on, and the other is the lot immediately to the west of the building, which we have an agreement with the town that it is used as a roadway, a road allowance now, but the lots are about the same size, is my understanding.
So the parking to the east of the front door of the curling club, that's municipal parking then, is it there? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Has any work been done on finding out approximately what a new build would be, or is there a comparison new build out there in Ontario that you can tap into and see it's kind of what they have paid and that sort of thing?
The most recent curling club built was in just outside of Ottawa, the Granite Curling Club, which is an 8-sheet facility. So there's 8 sheets of curling where ours is only 4. We are in connection with them, but I don't have the data on that yet. I'm also uncertain if they pursued a completely new build or if they were sort of like renovating and retrofitting within their space. But that is the newest facility around. In a sense, you have to spend money to make money. We feel sort of in this situation where pursuing tenders or engineering drawings for a new building are going to come at a cost where our budget currently is our operation costs at most. So it is something we want to pursue. And we are working on that. We had a meeting last night, but I don't have specifics on that to offer at this time. It's also, what do we want a new build to be? A 4-sheet curling club or a all-encompassing venue?
Okay, anything further? Counselor Hudson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Durham Curling Club is the same footprint. Is that correct?
It's very similar.
Okay. So with curling clubs, does someone go around periodically and make sure they're safe? Like that the building is actually still usable and not, roof trusses, that sort of thing? Because I know that they have done some work at the one in Durham. And so I'm assuming that some building official goes and checks and makes sure that it's all good to renovate and carry on from there. So does somebody ever go around to see how that works that you are aware of?
In my time on the curling club executive, I'm not aware of somebody coming to do an inspection. We do have insurance, and we switched insurance companies about 2 years ago and had them come and see the facility to make sure that our insurance covered our bases on those things.
So Andrew, you're going to the curling club tomorrow? Or?
Through your worship, no, yeah, really building officials, it kind of falls on new buildings or renovations, at time of an application. I would say fire prevention would walk through that on a yearly basis or bi-yearly, whatever that may be. And if they were to note some concerns, then they would notify us and we could look to address. But typically that's kind of a business owner or a property owner's responsibility to see if there's issues.
I'd say yes, the fire protection comes annually, specifically in our kitchen with our stove and range. They come in and inspect that on an annual basis.
Sherry, comment.
Just if I can add to that, I just know from our prior, like with our recreation center, there are times when you would have a structural engineer come through to comment on some of those things that you've mentioned, Councillor Hudson. So a structural engineer would be somebody who could provide an opinion on that type of thing through their inspection.
So do they then have to be hired by the, okay.
I would say typically that's a fee for service type of inspection.
Okay, so I would like to suggest that we ask staff to bring a report back with options that are available to us. And I have to ask, your specific request, is it the full amount for the condenser, the 73,000, or do you have a number in mind? Because if staff are going to bring back a report, they have to be able to work with a number.
Our ask is for as much as possible to that $73,000 goal. If I had to be specific, then I would say yes, 73,000. I understand that the curling club is not the only community organization in need.
So what if it was $5,000?
We need financial assistance and are not in the position to turn down any contributions.
Just so staff is aware that you don't need to work with just one number. Anything else, Sherry, required for a staff report?
No, I don't think so. You've provided, we'll probably have to do a bit of a check with the grant application, see if you've provided a lot of the information, which I think you had, Courtney, in your presentation. But if there's other things, we'd reach out accordingly.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Great.
All right, our second delegation is, this is item 8.2, and it's on page 43 of the package. And it is our CEO from the Hanover Public Library, Carolyn Cascanet. Welcome, Carolyn.
Sorry, that was loud. Hi, Council and your worship. I'm here today to present the annual report. I'm just waiting for it up on the screen. Or should I continue on, Tanya?
So Tanya, you'll be doing.
Just start right on the slides. The annual report was provided in the package, so I'm just going to highlight a few things. We can start right on the stats slide. A quick look at our stats. We had over 50,000 people visit the library last year. So if you take out holidays and Sundays, that's about 169 people per day. And we had circulation of 58,000 items. This is a well-used library. I know I've spoken to some of you personally and you've heard my employment history, but I've worked in city libraries and the Hanover circulation desk is busier than some of the city libraries I've worked at. An important part of rural libraries, including our library, is access to technology that people can't afford in our community. And it's rare to walk into our library and not see somebody using one of our computers. Last year, we had almost 5,000 people using our 4 computers. I'll go to the next slide. Next, we'll look at our finances. The biggest portion of the library spending goes towards direct user services, which makes sense because we're a public service. Direct user service includes assistance from the front desk staff, so their wages, photocopying, internet, Wi-Fi, programs offered by the library, and our e-resources. The next biggest expenditure is our rental for the space. Following that is administration and consumables, which is 75% of my wages, because I also do help at the front desk, and things such as postage for interlibrary loans and service fees for our accounts. After that is service deployment, which is the professional costs we pay. In 2023, it's so high because we had a strat plan developed. And circulating material is our lowest expenditure. We supplemented the amount funded by the tax dollar with our own funding of approximately $109,000, which is 15% of our operating budget. And our revenue comes from donations from the public, our fundraisers, fees from out-of-town residents, overdue fees, and fees for programming and printing. Next, I'm going to look at a new way that was developed by the Ontario Library Service of calculating a social return on investment. So there's going to be a lot of technical things I'm going to explain just so you can have some background of what social return is. And well, the Ontario Library Service is a municipal funded department, a ministry funded department. So this slide is good for now. The Ontario Public Library Service and the Nordic Institute worked on a toolkit called Valuing Ontario Public Libraries. And it's to create a comparator across all the Ontario libraries of how much benefit is created through our social services. The tool uses statistics that we submit to the ministry every year and then uses population and the distance from our closest city, a metropolitan area, to calculate how much each library returns to their society. At its most basic form, social return on investment takes something that is offered for free and applies a dollar value to it. So if we look at a computer literacy program, we would look at the businesses that offer computer literacy in the town, and they would use that dollar figure to see how much the library is offering in return. If there's not a service that is offered in town for that, they look at the wages that would be paid. This toolkit was created by a committee of CEOs, the Nordic Institute, which is a research group that did the Northern Library valuation system several years ago. And this new toolkit was created in 2021. It's going to be updated for the next 3 years to continue to value all the libraries on an equal basis. The information it looks at is circulation, attendance in the library, and number of chairs available or computers, and how the library is used. To make it balanced, the library is compared with the distance to a similar service. So these are the numbers that were calculated based on the Hanover Public Library, looking at education, culture, inclusion and well-being, entertainment and leisure, economic development, civic engagement, and space. The Hanover Public Library was calculated at an economic benefit of about $3 million, big number. I can describe what each one looks at. Education is looking at our programming and the books we provide. Culture looks at programming as well as our other language resources. So we have transparent languages that is used very heavily. Inclusion and well-being is things that are for visually and hearing impairment, as well as offering technology access and Wi-Fi. Entertainment is mostly the collection. Economic development is if we help with career or business opportunities and how much revenue we create for ourselves. Civic engagement looks at the partnerships with the organizations we have. I expect this number to increase in 2024 as we're working hard at the library to partner with a bunch of people in the community. And the space looks at how much space we have, including workspaces and chairs. On the next slide, looking at the value split over the population of Hanover, that works out to $403 per permanent resident or $925 per household. For every 1 hour that we are open, the Hanover Public Library generates $772 of economic benefit. For every $1 invested from council, we generate $5.48 of return, which is a 548% return on investment. And if you look at the business world, a good return on investment is 25 to 30%. That is our annual report. And I expect our numbers to go up in 2024 because I've hired a whole new staff and I've really been hiring people that have community at their core values. So we're enthusiastic and motivated to work with the community this year. And I'm sure you've already seen us out and about. I'm excited to present the values next year because we're increasing our programming and we're increasing the number of card holders we have. Looking at the first quarter of 2023 to the first quarter of 2024, we've increased our card holders by 5%. So we went from 36% of Hanover's population up to 41% holding a library card, which is really high if you compare to other rural libraries. We have also increased our foot traffic. Comparing the quarters again, we've had 500 more people this year than last year. In the fall, you can look forward to many of our programs that we have coming up, and we're trying to help the community with, we know that money's hard right now, so we are having programs to deal with the rising cost of food. We already have our seed library. We're doing a canning workshop and we're having a budgeting workshop for healthy eating. We're having a workshop for sewing and knitting to help with cost of clothes. And then we're just going to provide some entertainment. For Culture Days, we are having a multicultural event with the Grey Bruce Newcomer and Immigrant Women's Collective. They're each going to be representing the country they're from. And that's going to be happening in the park. And then we're also having the Sound of Hanover concert, which we're really thankful to the town for giving us that opportunity. We expect to have a lot of people coming in, and it's just a great way to show the culture and the town, and it includes books. Yes, we also have some big fundraisers planned. We have a murder mystery fundraiser coming up, and today we confirmed we're going to have a coffee with the local MP Alex Ruff. And that's everything, well, some of the things we have on the horizon for the library. And we look forward to getting out into the community, and we're always there to help you at the front desk. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I can try and answer them.
Thanks, Carolyn. Comments or questions? Counselor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Carolyn, for your report. I love a good murder mystery, by the way. So that'll be great. In your package, you made a reference to Blueberry the bear. Could you say a few words about who that is exactly?
We just created a mascot for fun, so he goes to all our events. You can, if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see him. He just, instead of having a library staff there, because our staff have been changing, we have a little mascot that goes around.
Very good. So I'd like to say a few things about what I've noticed. Absolutely, I'm seeing a presence of the library in a lot of community events, so way to go. I've also noticed that the library has a very young and vibrant staff, and our community is so fortunate to have them. So thank you for working on your staff hires with that in mind. Later today, Council is going to be hearing from the CAO on her review of our strategic plan. Under safe and reliable infrastructure, it states, and I quote, "Build municipally owned properties, buildings, and equipment," end of quote. So I was a member of the Hanover Public Library Board for 8 years, and I remember when we did a space needs study back in 2015, and we were told at that time that definitely we were too small for the number of people that we serve. So from 2015 until now, absolutely nothing has happened in terms of upgrading at the library that I know of, although I did notice you've been getting rid of some furniture, and your showcase is now gone from in front of your office. Our 2023-27 strategic plan says we will, quote, "explore options and costs for an upgraded library," end of quote. So according to report CAO 1724, Strat Plan Progress Update on page 181 of our package, the target date is the spring of 2025. So Carolyn, I'd like to know what your staff and yourself and your board are wanting from council for an upgraded library, because after all, the spring of 2025 is not all that far away. Thank you.
I've had a preliminary meeting with Sherry, and we will continue to talk about it. You're right, this space needs did show that the library was half the size it should be. It's under the minimum Ontario guideline. Hanover should have about an 8,000 square foot library at minimum. We have 4,550 feet. What the library needs is more space. We don't have enough room for our programs. We had a knitting program and we had 35 people. The library just doesn't have enough space for that. And for our children's programming, we have to go down the hall and we need multiple staff members because there's no bathroom in the program room that we do use. So what we need is just more space for the community. Like, we also need space for our staff. We're dealing with that as it is. We have been getting rid of stuff, moving stuff around to make it more accessible, but we need space for the people that come to use the library. Do you want, okay.
Through your worship, isn't there something about heights as well for the books? I seem to remember something about that.
Yep, that was in the space needs. Well, I am working to update the space needs. So that was almost 10 years ago, but this report said that the collections that we currently have would fill the whole space we have if we wanted it to be accessible. There would be no circulation desk, there would be no staff. The whole space right now is needed for the collection, and the collection's grown since 10 years ago.
Your worship. So when Alex Ruff comes, where are you going to do your coffee talk?
In the community hall, and we're having
Okay.
two
All
because
right.
we expect it to be very.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and excuse me, thank you, Kevin, for the report, and congratulations on the the fundraising that you're successful at and the grants that you get. That's great news. I do have a couple questions, and if you don't have answers, I understand because they're a little bit farther into the weeds, I guess you'd say. The operating budget is or costs for about $712,000 a year. And user fees are actually less than that, 4 point some%. Is that common across the library services in all of Ontario, or is that something that, we could look at user fees helping to offset a bit more of the operating costs? And the other question I had was in regards to, those are pretty impressive numbers when you look at that return on investment of, $1,365,000 in the entertainment and leisure side. I'd just like to get some better understanding on that. So I don't expect you to have an answer on that right now, but if you do, that would be great. Or
did
perhaps you could supply.
all of my numbers. But I don't know that it will give me further information. So you, entertainment. So how they calculated it is average collection costs based on item and type. So it looks at our whole collection and on how much books cost or how much the board games cost, as well as all of the databases we subscribe to. And then it also looked at all the program attendance we had. And then the cost of the program here looks, it's less than what my staff make, but it'd be close to what other library staff are making if they were at front desk. But like my programmer would make a little more than the calculation they're using. So user fees, to answer the first part, we charge per what a Hanover person would pay for a library card through their taxes. No libraries are free. Every library is paid for by the taxes. So somebody from Durham, we charge them the same that a Hanover person would be charged.
So the user fees that, I forget what the number was there, but that 4%, that's your memberships and book.
And overdue fines, yeah.
And fines and.
And how
things
much
of
we
that nature.
charge for programs. Not a lot of libraries charge for programs,
Okay.
but we feel we have to because we are a single branch. Like it's not common for a library to be all by themselves. Hanover's by themselves, they're not a county.
Mhm.
So a lot of libraries don't charge for programming and I'd prefer not to, but to keep up, to offer programs, we have to have a little bit of recovery.
And again, you may not know the answer to this, but how does that compare with other operations?
I'm not sure.
Okay, no, and that's fine. I guess it's kind of an off the path question there. So, yeah, and if possible, at some point, I'd like to better understand where that return on investment numbers. Yeah, it's a little.
I have in-depth information if you want to come talk to me someday.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the user fees are the non-resident fees. that,
Yes. Yeah.
Because does it not say in the Library Act that you have to provide a free service to
Yes.
residents?
So like we can't
Yes.
charge for the books or anything, but
Right.
we're just covering the tax from Hanover residents.
Yes, whatever a Hanover resident pays when it's, Chris gives the number on the breakdown for library use is what a non-resident pays. So, okay, Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for your report, Carolyn. I just want to know, are you responsible for the graphics of this report?
Yes,
Great job.
thank you.
Secondly, it caught my attention when you highlighted the services development of $68,000.
Mhm.
Was that spent all on a strategic plan?
No, 25,000 was on a strategic plan.
Okay,
Other things we pay for are the use of our program, like our database for the books of checking in and checking out.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Carolyn, for your report. I just have one question, and I don't know if there's any way of tracking this. 50,971 people visit the library, but I could visit the library like 100 times, so I'm part of that 50,000. So there's no way of getting an actual number. It says people, but actual people, like I guess.
I
there's-
don't think that would be possible to
No,
track.
because I read these number 50,000, which sounds pretty impressive, but you know, I could visit the library 100 times, but alrighty, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so thank you very much, Carolyn. Very informative. Moving on the agenda, item 9, we do not have any business arising from the minutes. So item 10 is council and committee of the whole minutes. 10.1 is the regular council meeting minutes from last month on June the 17th. I need a mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Dickert and Councillor Hawking. And just a couple of items to highlight. You'll remember we had a public meeting for our comprehensive zoning bylaw amendment. It was housekeeping items and it was passed. We also had a presentation for Hanover's Senior of the Year for 2024. That the recipient was Al Morrow and well-deserved. And we had Rebecca Broderick, the executive director, and Adam Olivero, the board chair for Launchpad, was in and gave us an update. We also had the chief of police presenting the annual report for 2023, and the chair, Peter Hambley of the Police Service Station Review Ad Hoc Committee, presented information about the physical needs of the Hanover Police Station. That was a busy agenda evening we had. Any questions or comments with those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes from June the 17th. That is carried. Item 11 is staff reports, and we have 11.1. We're on page 61. This is report DCS 0924. The subject is the Infrastructure Ontario Floating Rate Capital Line of Credit. It's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer. And I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Cable and Councillor Hawking. Chris?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council may recall we are building a new fire hall at First Street. And that amount was approximately 7.5 million. So we may require some interim funding until the project is actually completed and or we get some grant funding and other funds available for the project. We have investigated construction loan with our local bank as well as with Infrastructure Ontario, where you get the long-term borrowing from them. So we checked with the Infrastructure Ontario and they have a floating rate capital line of credit, which gives us an amount for up to 5 years, just in case something got delayed and you could keep it going and you're only paying interest on the loan until you actually fund it. So it's kind of like you're building a house, you get that house construction loan, just make sure you pay your interest each month. And then once it's completed, then you get to put it into a loan. So in order to do that, we needed to complete a general borrowing bylaw authorizing myself to apply to Infrastructure Ontario. Then I would have to do a certificate by the treasurer regarding any litigation, and I'd have to do an application online. And then once that's completed, we have to forward information to them. So right now, we want to ensure that our cash flow for the municipality is available to cover all these expenditures without impacting our day-to-day operations. There's a grant funding programs that we applied for. However, the timing for any of the payments, once we are possibly eligible for these grants, tends to be received well after the project expenses have been incurred by the municipality, causing us a reduction, which means we have to then pull money out of our reserve funds, transfer them in. So we're using, which means our interest goes down on the monthly bank interest. A project I know of right now, you're aware of the Trails project. Right now, we're still waiting on 920,000 of those bills that we paid from the infrastructure funding. So you basically are paying the money and it takes 6 to 9 months to get the government to pay back that money. So in the interim, you're paying everything up front. So the advantages to using the Infrastructure Ontario is that there's no cost for drawdowns, whereas if you went to a bank, if you've ever built a house, you have to charge so much, $300 to $500 every time you take out money, and it's done. Every draw you do that. There is no cost for that with Infrastructure Ontario. It allows our cash flow for our capital expenditures through this Infrastructure Ontario and not cut into our daily operations. And then we have 120 days to convert it if we need it the full 5 years. I'm going to say we're going to get this done by next May, June at the latest, once we get all the funding in place and stuff. The disadvantage is that if we don't take this credit line and we do all this work and everything else within a year, if we haven't even touched it, they would close that grant on us and we'd have to apply again if we wanted to have that loan, I should say. And the temporary loan interest fluctuates day to day. So when the interest rates go up, so does the loan. If it goes down, great, we get to the lower rate as well. And if at the end of the temporary borrowing, we want to now apply for a long-term loan and we decide we want to go Infrastructure Ontario again, besides a bank, we then would have to apply and do another bylaw as well. So this bylaw is strictly for temporary borrowing purposes only. And as I've mentioned, Infrastructure Ontario is only one option for long borrowing. As you may remember, we borrowed for the P&H Center and we did it locally through banks so that we could go and refinance after 5 years. We actually had a 15-year is the actual term we ended up with for the P&H Center instead of a 20-year because we did a 5-year. Then the rates went really down low. We were able to lock in for a 10-year at a lower rate. So we were able to get that done within 15 years. The disadvantage I see of Infrastructure Ontario is the long-term goal. If you do a 20-year, you are locked in for 20 years regardless. You cannot stop it early. Not that we're going to have any things with all these new builds everybody wants us to have to pay for in the town. So I don't see us paying things off too much earlier as we've been able to in the past. So the financial implications, but there's nothing at this time with this report until we actually start to borrow. And we have budgeted about 143,000 for interest payments anyways in 2024 budget for the fire hall, because we knew we had to put 50% away to borrow for the eventual loan that's going to happen for the fire hall. The current rates for the borrowing, right now it's a 5.42% for construction financing. And the rates that we get at the bank right now is 1.55% below prime. Prime was 7.5, which means we can make more money leaving the money in the bank at 5.9 and paying them the 5.42%. So we'd still keep the money going and we can pay less on the interest and losing interest. To date, we've already paid over 3.2 million, which means we don't have any money for the fire hall right now. It's just the basic $140,000 that we put aside each year. So I'm pulling money out of reserve to cover that right now. So our water reserves, wastewater reserves, our investing in Hanover reserves that are sitting in a separate account have to be transferred into the other so that we don't lose our daily cash flow that we're looking at. So this is the request for this money. So the recommendation is that this report, DCS 0924, Infrastructure Ontario Floating Rate Capital Line of Credit, basically borrowing temporary process, be received, and that council approve the bylaw authorizing staff to proceed with the Infrastructure Ontario process for securing a floating capital line of credit.
Thanks, Chris. Comments, questions? Councillor Cable.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering, Chris, I believe it says further back in the bylaw when it talks about the breakdown of funding for the fire hall, that there's the Green Municipal Grant, which is around 800,000. Was there a loan piece that's available to the municipality that goes along with being eligible for green municipal projects?
Through Your Worship, we applied for the FCM Green Municipal Grant. If we are successful with that, there would be a portion of that is 800,000 is a true grant. And the balance of that, I think, was about 5.8 million would actually be a long-term loan that you'd have to lock in for. Their rate is be lower than this one, just slightly, not much. They're pretty close. But you're locked in then for that term, and it would be a 20-year term at about $5.8 million. Again, this would be the temporary loan. Once we get the FCM grant funding we're eligible for, then we just pay off what we have here. Then this loan is now no longer. And if any future loaning that we require for other temporary borrowing, say you decide to build another building or you need some longer term cash for something, we'd have to apply for another temporary borrowing as well through that.
Thank you. And also wondering if you could clarify, it's kind of related to this item. There's the $780,000 for the fire hall that the Ontario government is granting. Is that specific to the fire hall build, or is that just for the equipment in this specialty training portion of the building?
Through you, Your Worship, we received notification on that. However, when we applied, it was for the training area only. So basically 15% of the build is the training portion, and then what's ever done in the training area. So we could get up to 780,000. However, we applied in June 2023. We're still waiting for the documentation. They basically said you can't have built yet to get that money. So we're not very optimistic that that money that they're announced for us is actually going to be available to us.
Thank you. I think that's all that I have.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of DCS 0924. That is carried. 11.2 is report DCS 1024. It is the municipal funding agreement for Canada Community Building Fund. And from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Cable and Councillor Hudson. Chris?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council member, we used to always call it the AMO Gas Tax Fund. This has been renamed the Canada Community Building Fund. Back in 2005, the federal government introduced this funding agreement, and AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, was the representative for Ontario as the administrator, and they would then provide all the money through them. The federal government would give it to AMO. AMO would then distribute it to each municipality. In 2029, they did a further 4-year amendment. And then in 2014, they did a 10-year. So in 2023, at the end of that is the new agreement that's been announced. So they've announced a further 10 years starting for 2024 to 2033. And in order to do that, it's called a municipal funding agreement. So we need to be able to sign this agreement to allow AMO to accept that money on behalf of the Ontario government and then distribute that to each municipal partner. So that new municipal funding agreement has been attached, and we have stable funding and predictable funding for the municipality for the next 10 years. We are only aware of the first 5 years of what the amounts are going to be. So they're going to range from $250,400 up to $271,400 by the end of 5 years. And then the further 5 years, they'll let us know in probably around 2027 what those next 5 years will be. So basically, within this agreement, municipalities need to continue with the annual reporting, the outcomes, communication protocols, everything that we've done in the past and demonstrating once we sign that agreement. In 2024, council may remember that we earmarked $250,000 of this CCBF funding, all for the 2nd Street East, 18th Ave, and the Fire Hall project altogether. So the recommendation is that this report DCS 10-24 for the municipal funding agreement for the Canada Community Building Fund, or CCBF, be received, and that council approve a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the municipal funding agreement for the town of Hanover so that we can continue to receive this money on a yearly basis. It's not a lot, but $250,000 is $250,000.
Thanks, Chris. Comments, questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, item 11.3, this is on page 67. It is report PB 1824. The subject is exemption from draft plan of condominium approval for 595 First Street, and it's from Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Fleet and Deputy Mayor Dickert. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, there's been a building standing at 595 First Street for quite a few years. The town originally sold those lands in 2024, and soon after that, there was a shell constructed. In September of 2021, John Gill, the owner of Just In Time Capital Inc., purchased that building and planned to convert it to a 26-unit industrial complex. They also proposed a second building at that time of a little over 35,000 square feet, titled Building B, which would expand the use. All the units on that property are intended to meet the industrial zone that the lands are zoned on. I did include an excerpt in your package here, which would be on page 69, that shows the two buildings on that property. In December of 2022, a building permit was issued to create these 26 separate industrial units within the existing building shell that had been standing there. Construction's ongoing. Construction is nearly complete, nearly at a point of occupancy with the main work, the exterior works to be done to date. Based on feedback and discussion with potential tenants, the owner believes that the ability to sell these individual units would better allow for them to reach the full occupancy potential. Now, to do this, the owner is required to go through a plan of condominium, which is a Grey County approval. You hear plan of condominium, you typically think of residential properties, but it doesn't always need to be the case. Andre Sherman, I believe, is on the call here today to answer some questions if they may arise. In May of 2024, town staff, county staff, and the agent for the owner, Andre Sherman of Andre Sherman Architects, did have a call. We had a Zoom call to discuss the potential of meeting the plan of condominium exemption, which it appeared that those requirements were met. For an exemption to be granted, the county must be assured that the municipality supports the owner's exemption. Normally, this means the municipality will not impose any additional conditions that would usually apply to draft plan of approval. In this instance, really the exemption's there to really shorten up the time and the public notice requirements for lands that were already designated as something where, whether it is one property being leased out individually to different sublets, or one property that has all these lands up for purchase, it really does not change the intent of the property, nor does it affect any of the abutting landowners or other businesses within the area. However, how that's operated. Once the county has received the town's endorsement, really a lot similar to what we've provided for the draft plan extension not too long ago for the subdivision to the north of town, very similar to that extension type of letter, is a letter of support would be provided. And do not require additional conditions. It will issue correspondence confirming the exemption. At that stage, the applicant will submit a final condominium plan for signing and delivery to the land registry office once the county has approved. There are no financial implications to this report. The link to the strategic plan is balanced growth. The recommendation is that report PB 18-24 exemption from draft plan and condominium approval 595 First Street be received, and that council agree to support the exemption from the town requirement of draft plan approval for the proposed plan of condominium, and that the town of Hanover does not have any additional conditions to impose in the approval of this application. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a question. Does each individual owner then have to check with you so they meet the requirements of the business park or industrial park, whatever we want to call it?
Through your worship, yes, essentially. It would be no different than a residential building in town, requiring a permit to do some renovations within their unit itself. But yes, anybody doing work, so an owner would need to touch base with the town, and they would be responsible for receiving a building permit for as required, or to confirm the use. Very similar to a zoning compliance letter, perhaps they would request at the time of purchase.
Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Worship. So Andrew, does this fall under the Condominium Act, where one of the provisos is they have to form a board of directors when there's 50% occupancy, and they have to go through the board to make any changes? So I guess the same as a residential condominium.
Through your worship, yes, it would follow the same rules as in the act. Regardless, residential or industrial, the same rules would apply.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the common ground or the parking area would remain common ownership, I guess, amongst the condominium corporation. And any business going in there, I believe, similar to what Mayor Patterson asked, would have to comply. It would be the same businesses going in there, whether it's a condominium or whether it was one ownership.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. It's regardless of how it's sold off or leased off, the same applies. Yes, the parking area would be a part of the condo ownership, as well as the common space within the facility as well. There is one common entrance at the north side of the building and a common corridor down the center.
And this would apply to both the buildings, the existing building there, plus the proposed building to the west of that one, but has no connection to the property on the east side of 18th Ave.
Correct. Yes, this exemption would apply to the property as a whole for the building that stands now and the future building being proposed with the individual units. Would have no bearing on the property to the east of 18th extension.
Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Andrew. I'm just, property taxes. Does the condo owner pay the taxes on their own unit, or does the owner of the building pay the taxes?
Through your worship, I can be corrected by somebody that may know, but my understanding is that the owner, the condominium corporation, would pay the tax.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of PB 1824? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, item 11.4, we're on page 75 of the package. This is report CL 0324. The subject is sympathy expression policy updates. It's from our clerk, Vicky McDonald. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Sackle and Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. In September of 2011, Council adopted the sympathy expression policy to formalize the existing practice of providing a form of commemoration to Council committee members and staff for a family member's death. This policy was incorporated into the personnel policy manual at that time. And while the personnel policy has been updated periodically, the sympathy expression policy has not been regularly reviewed or updated. In consultation with Human Resources recently, aspects of the policy that required amendment were identified. And these amendments are reflected in red font and strikeout in the draft policy that was included in your agenda. Sorry, these changes will provide consistency with the personnel policy as it exists currently, as well as support our current corporate and human resource objectives. It's anticipated that the financial impacts will be limited. The link to the strategic plan is open and accessible government, and the recommendation is that report CL 03-24 ADM-007 sympathy expression policy updates be received and that council approve the recommended amendments to the policy. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Vicky. Any comments or questions? Councillor Cable, then Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering, in section I, or this is 4A I, where it lists down the criteria, where would you see grandparent fitting into the policy? We have grandparent-in-law and step-grandparent fitting into II, but nowhere in the document does it talk about grandparent in general.
That would have been an oversight on my part. So grandparent would go in that same category. So that I will amend the policy to add that.
Thank you.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is a very extensive list, and I guess my question is, how will you ever know about half of these individuals?
Through your worship, that we would rely upon staff, management, department head to advise us when there has been a death in the family. And if there has been a request for time off to, because they're allowed certain time off for bereavement, then we can also be made aware through that.
So it's kind of up to the individual to inform you then. And if they choose not to, or don't think about it, because I'm sure they're thinking of other things, if it's missed, is that an issue then?
Through you, your worship, to date, we have not had an issue with respect to your concern. Typically, there is a staff member or supervisor that is aware when a staff member has a deceased family member, and we are made aware of that. Certainly, there may be circumstances where the person does not wish to share that information, and that's their personal privacy that we would respect.
So if it's someone that's retired and they move away, or, you know, that's got to be tricky, a tricky situation for you to send condolences to that person then, I'm sure.
Through you, your worship, it would be. Again, it's something that we have been doing when we receive notice, and the process is the same as it has been in the past. This is just to formally update the process that we're currently undertaking. And there is no guarantee that we will be aware of all retirees or past mayors or even current staff family members that have passed.
So in getting the guidance for the additional ones, as opposed to just spouse, sibling, parent, grandchild, other, the list below in 4A II, is that something that was given to you as suggestions, or did that come from staff and management?
I'm just going to pull open that section. This was circulated to human resources as well as finance. And it does, I just want to pull up this section here, sorry, so that I can specifically see what you're referring to.
It's in the union agreement and the personal policy.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for being confirmed that it is in the personnel policy.
Can you repeat that, as Chris didn't have her microphone on and if anyone's listening?
It is in our union agreement and our personnel policy. And those recommendations were provided to me by our human resources manager.
Great, thank you, Vicki.
Other Councillor Hawking.
So this is a minor, thank you, Your Worship. This is a minor point. Does sibling refer to full sibling and half sibling?
It would.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All in favor of CL 0324 with the one amendment? That is carried. Okay, Vicki again, item 11.5, page 79. This is CL 0424. Subject is Commissioner of Oath and Affidavits policy, and from Vicki, our clerk. I need a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor Hawking and Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Commissioner for Taking Affidavits Act and Ontario Regulation 38612 establishes who may act as commissioners for taking oaths and affidavits in Ontario and the extent of that authority. Municipal clerks and treasurers, as well as a deputy clerk and deputy treasurer, which are statutory positions under the Municipal Act, are granted authority to act as commissioners of oaths and affidavits within their municipality. Due to the nature of these appointments, Town of Hanover staff are limited in the types of documents and affidavits they can commission. Commissioning a document outside the scope of this This authority can result in the legality of the affidavit being called into question and can be an issue of personal liability for the commissioner. The intent of this policy is to ensure consistency in the process and the information shared with the public about the commissioning services provided by the town. There are no financial implications associated with this policy, and the link to the strategic plan is open and accessible government. The recommendation is that report CLO 424, Commissioner of Oath and Affidavits Policy be received, and that council approve ADM 024, Commissioner of Oath and Affidavits Policy. And I will answer any questions.
Thanks, Vicky. Comments or questions? No questions, no comments. All in favor of CL 0324? That's wrong. CL 04. CL 0424. Caught me. That's carried. Okay, so moving on to 11.6, this is page 89. CAO 1424. The subject is the Hanover Police Station review. It is from 3 people: Sherry Walden, our CAO, Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, and Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO. And I would imagine, Sherry, you are going to start, but I need a mover and seconder first. Councillor Fleet and Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, the 3 of us have provided input to this report. I got to shout out to Chris, though. She had perhaps the most work, you might say, in getting the information. So she'll cover the financial information. As you recall, on June 17th, you heard the Hanover Police Service Station Review Ad Hoc Committee report that was presented by both the chairperson and a follow-up report from myself. And that conclusion of that report was that the most appropriate scenario and site for HPS, Hanover Police Service, would be to construct a new 2-story, 12,000 square foot building on the soon-to-be former fire hall location. At that time, council requested further information with respect to financing options, if I can say it that way, and proposed next steps. So within the discussion part of this report, the proposed next steps are outlined for the next 3 years, with 2024 being really that project initiation. It's where council commits to, yes, this is the direction we are moving forward with, and construction of that facility. Project terms of reference or charter would be drafted and approved. This is very similar to our fire hall, and the internal project team would be confirmed accordingly. 2025 would be the design stage, and that's where we would determine if net zero feasibility study would be occur. And if implemented, this study would be completed and then the directions adopted accordingly. The design and design, architectural and contract administration RFP would occur, and the farm would be hired. That design phase would be completed. Potentially tender documents would be established and could be late 2025 or early 2026 for that tender stage. 2026 is really when that construction would start. And again, depending on that tender, but if it was early 2026, then the award of the tender would occur during that time. Demolition of the fire hall would occur because that would be part of the construction. I would assume that would be part of the construction phase, is that the demolition would be included in the actual building. You would hire the same firm who oversees that. Construction would start with 2027 being that completion and project closeout, where construction's completed, finalized the funding, and we've moved in accordingly. You may ask, when then would we decide what is happening with the existing police station? That would come following that project completion stage, and really would be almost like a separate determination at that point in time. Council did ask for a number of financial information, and Chris is going to highlight that information that's included in the financial implications section. So Chris, I'll let you go from there.
Thank you, Chair. So based on the assumption that we need 8.5 million for a new police station, and it's all going to be borrowed because we have no reserves or anything at this point for that. And based on the Infrastructure Ontario loan interest rates as of June 21st that we are aware of, a 20-year loan would be a 4.43%, which would equal about 650,000 a year for 8.5 million. Think of that as every million's about $77,000 on the levy. And if it's a 25-year, it would be an interest rate of 4.58, yearly payments of 578, and on every million about $68,000 onto the levy. So every million that you're borrowing, it's going to be, so if we can get fundraising, anything you want to take on that 8.5 million, drop it down, you've just reduced $68,000 to $77,000 a year for every million that you get funding for or have find other revenue sources for. So at that time, there was a few council asked for. So the police reserves, there is approximately $800,000, and they have a lot of legal costs as well. So they want to have some sort of buffer reserve in there. So there's a possibility that council should maybe request to the Hanover Police Services Board, consider confirming an approval of a minimum of 500,000 of these funds. Keep in mind, most of these funds came from the municipality itself, and all their savings then just got put into a reserve for that portion. And again, these will just be one-time funds available. So it would basically drop the 8.5 million down by 500,000. So again, half of that 77,000, so about 37.5, you would save on the levy doing that. There was a request to, can we take 300,000 from OLG funds to reduce the loan impact? We currently budget 1.3 million in OLG revenue in our budgets, and we have made a conscious effort over the years to make this funding available mostly through capital, so we're not dependent on it for operation purposes only, in case we have a COVID-19 incident that happens again, and our 1.3 drops to under $400,000. Then we're not stuck saying that we can't do operations on a daily basis. You then take the hit just on your capital. So that's where we have been using that money. So that 1.3 million that's budgeted in 2024 is, we're putting aside approximately 116,000 right now to our TCA reserve fund we use for our existing capital, so that we can tap into that up to 60% every year as we keep growing that amount, so that we know that that's guaranteed revenue. It's almost like our internal revenue that we're using for capital all the time. And then the balance of those monies are the actual tax revenue impact that would be used for their capital projects. You may remember we had $15 million worth of capital in 2024, of which 1.122 was from the OLG funds for that, and the rest went to the TCA reserve fund. Potentially allocating 300,000 of this OLG revenue towards this future police station operating loan repayments, again, operating, I'm stressing that word operating, will reduce the amount available for capital down to 883,000 a year for our capital projects. Our current capital investment is not maintaining our existing infrastructures as it is. To reduce it another 300,000 would make it very difficult to keep up with our asset management requirements. A levy increase of approximately 350,000 would still be required for this loan, even if we put in the OLG just in the first year. The use of this OLG funds does not provide any additional revenues and reduces the monies available for yearly capital requirements. As staff members, we highly recommend that this option not be adopted, because we have done such hard work in the past to try and get this OLG earmarked for specific purposes and not to do one-offs on different little projects. We had been asked about phasing in the project. We have a 2-year phase-in that we could possibly do starting in 2025 and 2026. It would be an impact of approximately 3.57% on the levy or 3.17% on the levy, depending again which amortization period you were going to look at. If you go back to the previous page, on page 90, you will notice the impact of the loan interest on 8.5 million. So doing it more than 20 years is not highly recommended, because you're looking at another $1.5 million just in interest to pay out. So the faster you can get it paid off, the better, but again, within your budget limitations. So like I said, you have either a 3.57% impact over 2 years or 3.17 depending on the amortization period. The 3-year phase-in, as Sherry had provided in the actual discussion area, would be between 2.38% for a 20-year or a 2.12% levy increase. So again, it's a gradual impact to your levy, knowing that you're going up 2% each year to cover the eventual cost for this borrowing. And then there was a request regarding the tax assessment growth. So based on the past 5 years, our average supplementary taxes, which would be any new revenues brought in because we have new assessment that comes in, was approximately 67,300. The town technically already budgets at 54,000 as our supplementary taxes and or less write-offs. Basically, if you had a commercial property and now you are changing it to residential, you go from a commercial tax down to resident, that's what a write-off would be, a change in the assessment class. But most of it is for all new residents that are added on. So all the new subdivisions that we have, as the properties come on, we get new supplementary. So we're already budgeting 54,000 for the past 3 years. So it's basically in there as unassigned revenue. So of that 67,000 that we've got, we've already earmarked 54,000 as part of our budget. So we've provided, there was a request regarding our large multi-residential projects, the one on the corner over here, and then the future of GeoFocus over there. Council may remember that you had signed tax incentive equivalent grants, so we're kind of limited on the amount of tax increase we're going to have in the first part, but you've got an eye for the future, so you're looking for the long-term development, the future assessment that you're going to be looking at. So we provided you with a quick overview of the anticipated tax dollars for the next 8 years, and we're assuming that you're going to have a minimal 2% tax increase. So as you can see, 2025, we're already budgeting originally 54,000. If we bring in 67,000, we're going to have another 13,000, assuming that 5-year growth. And as we bring on the multi-residential units, the TEAG less the TEAGs, we're probably going to see about a 3% by the year 7, because all the TEAGs will have been covered, and then we're actually bringing in the taxes that we get to keep. But you know, you make a small pain to get that long-term gain at this. So this details, the table details it basically there, that there are limited additional tax dollars from any increased assessment, unless we get a huge amount of new property that's come into Hanover that we're not aware of. But right now it doesn't look that way. And remember, the more assessment growth creates higher tax revenues, which can lower the increases to the tax rate for the same levy required. I think we go through this every year in budget time, don't we? Then the impact to our annual repayment limit. Every year we have to fill out the financial information return, and they provide us with an annual repayment limit, which indicates that the town has the capacity to pay upwards of almost $3.8 million a year towards long-term debt. This equates to approximately $45,300,000 in long-term borrowing, over 7% over 20 years. Keep in mind, the ability to borrow the maximum depends on the capacity of the municipality to be able to repay that limit of $3.8 million. This would require a large tax increase and or large user fee increases, depending what your long-term borrowing. Again, if you're doing for water, wastewater, it's all user fee based. If you're doing police buildings, fire buildings, any buildings, parks, et cetera, it's all through the tax base. So right now I've given you the next chart, table 5 on page 94, that shows you what we currently have for a loan is with our P&H Center loan. And that will be up again. As I said, we were proud to be done within 15 years on that project. And we're taking that $170,000 and going to reallocate it to pay off our loan for the trail bridges. The loan, we're not sure yet whether it'll be external or internal. It depends on what we have available. We may have to go out and borrow for that $900,000 to $1 million that's required for the town portion part of it. Then we have the fire hall building that we're assuming a 20-year amortization. So the yearly repayment will be about $468,000. And we already put in an increase in 2024. Now we're adding it in 2025. Again, baby steps to get us to where we need to be. We also have that fire hall pumper truck that we have over a 3-year period. In 2026, we're going to put in an amount in our budget, and in 2027, because that's the year that we're actually having to repay for the full amount of the fire pumper truck. And then the police station would again be a 3-year, assuming a 20-year amortization, starting in 2025 with a 2.38, 26, 27, same amounts. So based on the current levy that we charged in 2024 of $9.1 million, adding the additional amounts currently not in the levy, which was 50% of the fire hall, the full pumper trunk, and the full police station totals approximately another $978,000 that's required. This equates to about a 10.7% levy increase for those three loans being added over the next 3 years. Again, the gradual increase, instead of being a hit of 10.7%, you're slowly putting in that amount over 3 years. There is a high likelihood that the wastewater treatment plant will require long-term debt financing along with some major grant funding in order to be completed. So based on the annual repayment limit, there is still about $2.4 million that we can pay back of that 3.9 that's available. But again, can we afford it? And that would all be through wastewater rates, which would be a huge amount. So this could provide additional loan capacity of approximately 25.5 million in the long term after these 4 loans that I've shown you up there that are externally and that we're repaying back. You still could borrow another 25.5 million if it's at 7% over 20 years, or it could be about $30 million over 20 years if it's at 5%. Again, we're all dependent on that percentage. And as you've seen from the previous charts, long-term debt is a huge hit for interest rates. Really, you want low interest rates to happen. I think that as we were talking here, I got something come up across from the Bank of Canada. Hey, the rates may be going down again. They're looking at possibly. So that would be, keep our fingers crossed that that might happen. There was also a request, do we have any grants available? There is currently no grant funding available specific for police buildings. If this construction were to be similar to the fire hall as a net zero, we may be able to apply the same way we did for FCM for green municipal funding. But again, if you want it green, net zero, it's going to probably cost you, as Andrew had mentioned last time, at least 750,000 plus for that, depending on how big it goes and stuff. And then council also asked us about other local municipal police builds, how they funded it. So I was able to talk with Saugeen Shores treasurer, and their project was about $6 million that was completed in 2018 and 2019. It was not on their tax levy. They have charged a specialized dedicated levy specific to the police building. So they're charging a flat rate per roll number. So it has nothing to do with the assessment on property. So a little old lady with a $150,000 house and a rich guy with $1 million house are paying the exact same specialized levy fee, just so you're aware of that. And that fee started at $60 per roll number, but as they've gotten more properties and more roll numbers, as the roll numbers go up, that has dropped down to 45. As you were talking before about the condos, all I could think of was, oh, only one roll number there. But if he does condos, we're looking at 36 roll number. So now we got 36 roll. So again, they get individual roll numbers for that, right? And it was fully funded through the tax base being this dedicated levy. And there are no grants or development charges that were used in the capital works. And they noted maybe there might be some available towards the loan repayments in the future as they get the growth that's coming in, because you're allowed to be part of that from development charges. And they used a 20-year amortization loan term borrowing with Infrastructure Ontario. The other one we checked with was West Gray, our neighbors who are building approximately an $8.8 million project to be completed in 2025. They are borrowing exclusively for the majority of the building costs to be covered through the tax base. They had a small amount from reserves and development charges available, but not a significant amount. So most of that was for their design in different areas, but they're still built for the building itself. It's a long term. For the past 3 years, they paused the actual build. I guess it was supposed to be done about 3 years ago. They were looking at that. And what they have done is increase their levy by approximately 2%. So the amount that they figured that they're going to need to cover that $8.8 million cost, they put away into a reserve and just put that money away for the past 3 years. And they've done that in 2024. They've added that and they're starting their construction in 2024, and in 25 should be the final increase of 2%. So basically they were looking at about an 8% increase. So they did 2, 2, 2, and now there'll be 2 next year as well. And that's when they'll start to repay that back. Basically, they have phased in the anticipated police station loans over 4 years. So Sherry, did you want to go on unless anyone had any questions specific to the financing?
Yeah, I think obviously the report before you this evening is that you receive report CAO-14-24 Hanover Police Station Review. And that council confirm their direction with respect to the construction of a new police station and or indicate to staff if you have further information you require before making that decision.
Who wants to start? I'll start. I have a couple of questions. I see the splash pad was not included. Is that sort of minor compared to the other major projects?
Through you, your worship. It was my understanding it was $640,000 and 300,000 had to be from donations. So there was only going to be 340,000. So that would have been probably an internal borrowing if we were going to do that. If it tends to be over that amount, anything over $500,000, we probably want to look to externally because we are limited on funding available to constantly borrow internally for longer than a 3 to 5 year period.
My other question is the multi-residential, the Teague, is that just the one building on 10th Street or is it both?
It was both. The anticipation that we were expecting on the corner of 14th Street and 23rd and 24th area there, as well as that one, based on the Teagues that were signed. So I took an amount, once they were built, these are the amounts that taxes that we were anticipating to get and how much of the Teague that we had to repay back. The one
So-
on the corner was a 2-year Teague. The other one over in that corner is a 5-year, but it was a percentage of 195, 90, 85 and 80.
So if the one on 24th Avenue is delayed longer than we expect, is that in your figures?
It would just delay how long before we'd actually get the assessment on the property. But as soon as we get the assessment on the property and they pay full taxes, as soon as they pay the full taxes, the Teague kicks in and says, you have to pay back 100% of the town portion. Then the next year's 95 till you get to a maximum of whatever it was per building that the Teague was. I think it was 525. They could get that done in 2 to 3 years. Because it's my understanding they're changing the building to be a smaller building to start with, and then the other one's a bigger one, but your Teague stated a maximum of 525 for each.
Thank you. Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Christine, for the excellent report, and Sherry. I just want to talk about police reserves. Her Worship and I were at police board this morning. I had this report with me, and they will most likely, I mean, they were prepared to make a motion, but it has to come to us. So the likelihood of $500,000 from police services is quite good. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Secondly, and I got more information from Chris as we were waiting for council, but I followed up on this this levy of that Saugeen Shores. I never heard of this before, so I found it quite interesting. So I called this morning, and just to give you an idea what that levy would do is we have 3,263 registered on the roll. And if we charged a flat fee of $50 a year, which is $1 a week, we would raise $163,150 per year. And if we did that for 20 years, we would pay 40% of the total cost through 3.2 million would be raised through a levy. I understand the fairness of it, but I just wanted you to be aware that that's another way of which we could fund. And apparently other municipalities do this to pay for infrastructure costs. My third question is, could you provide me the timeline when we decided to form the committee for the new fire hall? Was it spread over 3 years or was it spread over 2 years? I understand the reason for 3 years and that we could have an extra year to put away funds, but I like the idea of having it open for business as of to conclude this term of council, I guess what I'm saying. So that would be December of 2026, we would have it built and ready for occupancy. So if you could just give me that information, I'd appreciate it. Another request is councils go through, you know, sort of a time frame where they look at infrastructure, and I was the end of my first term on council. It was the beginning of a new phase of infrastructure. We talked about a new aquatic center, and then we talked about a P&H center, and then the council of the day built this beautiful building at the Civic Center, and then they did Heritage Square. And I'd like some idea of what that cost was over, you know, a 20-year period that, you know, that the town was faced with ongoing costs to complete infrastructures. This is an important project, long overdue, but it does throw some, you know, questions with the long-term financing, especially when we have wastewater down the road. You know, thank goodness we have sort of funds in for the water tower, but I don't think we should be nervous about this. I think it's just part of doing business, looking at the infrastructures, and, you know, make sure we keep pace so that we have a town that is not only safe, but provides the services required to keep moving forward. So thank you.
So, Sherry.
I can maybe start and through you, your worship, Andrew can help out, but with the fire hall, so that emergency services review report was accepted in 2021. My understanding is, I believe it was either late 2021 or early 2022 that the fire hall committee started. Do you know if it was late or early 2022?
Yes, through your worship. I think early 2022 is when the charter was brought to council, and that would kind of be our starting point.
Right. So that's when they started, but then their net zero report became their first 6 to 8 months of their work. Once that work was determined, that's when they moved into the contract administration. If you recall, we did that last January. January 2023, we awarded that contract. So that net zero piece was that first phase, similar to what this is. If this is considered to have a net zero study, that would become part of that phase too. So it was almost probably 2.5 years. But from a financing perspective, that might be better question for Chris. We've phased it in over 2 years, correct, Chris? Versus a 3 is what? As an option here.
The funding for the fire hall? Yes. It's part of our debt management policy. If we are anticipating to take on debt, the year before you plan on actually borrowing the money, you have to put 50% away so that you're not getting hit with a full 5% at one time. You're doing a 2.5, or as much as you can the first year, and then adding in the next year. Because what councils have done in the past is we're just borrowing for it anyways. It's not going to hurt the capital. We can put in as much as we want. And then it's like, but the next year is the operations get hit. Because it's nothing to borrow for capital if you're not having any funds from taxes that year for capital purchases. It just becomes a future cost. And that's what I've seen a lot of councils do in the past in different areas. And if I could answer one of your questions, you talked about other municipalities adding infrastructure costs. Most of those other municipalities have wards or bigger areas that aren't just Hanover. So I would say, let me see, Brockton has like the old Brant, the old Greenock, and they have the Walkerton area. They have a dedicated levy on theirs for their landfill purposes directly, so that not all members of the public that are taxpayers pay for all landfills at the same time, because they pay more to be at the Hanover Walkerton landfill site. I think it's my understanding it's $75 per property in Walkerton has to pay that per roll number. And then in Brant Greenock, they're paying for the rural landfill areas, and they pay a little less because they're not as large. So that's what those dedicated levies have been for in the past. Whereas Saugeen Shores could do this as a straight levy because they just took all of their properties in that area.
Who's next? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the details. I just want to speak to the options that you went through there, and I agree that we do not want to use the OLG funds because our asset management plan needs those finances so that we can keep up on the infrastructure rebuilds that we need to do. So totally agree with what staff is suggesting there, that we would not take that extra 300,000 out of the OLG funds. I support the proceeding with the building. You know, it's a service that our police service has been working in some less than favorable conditions for several years, and I think it is much needed. And I would like to see it over the 3 years as far as the rate increases. I think it's a little more manageable. I'm not really in favor of a levy on each individual because I think that's, you know, it's costing the same, and it's not as equitable as Chris had explained when the $200,000 property is paying the same as the $1.5 million property. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Good. Other Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you very much, Chris, for the report. I would agree that the 3-year phase-in is the option that I would like to see as well. I am wondering if it has to be evenly split over all 3 years. We know that in 2025, we also have the rest of the fire hall coming on board. So I do wonder if it'd be possible to have a lower percentage in 2025. So for example, you're 1.38, and then you would add that extra percentage on, split it over the other 2 years. And I also just want to make sure that I'm clear on how this usually works. So if I'm understanding correctly, so you've got the $216,000, say, that would be going away in 2025. Then in 2026, we're collecting another 216,000. So really that year you're collecting 216 plus 216 plus the 216 from the year before. And then if the police station or if the police services board was to provide a contribution of $500,000, so then we'd be around $1.1 million that would be kind of in a reserve at that point going into 2027. So with those funds there, would that $1.1 million be able to, I guess, overall reduce the amount that's being borrowed?
3-year, Your Worship. I would think if it's a 3-year phase-in, you're going to be paying so much money each year for the design and different areas. So you're not just going to put that money off to the side. I would think that you would want to use that 216,000 or whatever the amount becomes that year to pay down part of that. And then whatever is left over, we're going to borrow internally until we go to the next year. And then we keep doing that. So you're basically putting down the amount of that 8.5 down in a roundabout way down that 1.1 million that you were talking about. And then that would reduce it down almost $100,000 a year. So that 649 now becomes 549 a year. Every million you can put down, as I said, will drop about 77,000 based on these these interest rates. If the interest rates go down even more, that will even be a better advantage to us. So the more that we can get grant funding, the more that we can get that 8.5 down lower, will be less that we have to have on operations to be increasing our levy. So yes, you can do the 1.38 in the first year because our debt management policy says the year before you go to borrow, you have to make sure that you have at least 50% of that 650,000 somewhere in there. So you need to have at least 325 that was added between those last 2 years to put that in there.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm just wondering, I guess maybe it's related to something that Councillor Sackle said earlier, and then we had Councillor Hawking speaking about large capital projects. And I just wondered, do we have a really clear plan of when our major projects are going to occur? Like I'm thinking of, so we know that the medical center is about 20 years old. We've got the P&H center is now 14 years old. We have a new fire hall. We have a new police station. We've talked about the library. We have a civic center. We've got all these different projects. At what point do they get phased in, right? Because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to me that we would have everything new within a 25-year span, right? We'd want to have projects that 10 years from now, we're looking at, is it the civic center or is it the library?
3-year, Your Worship, we have an asset management plan that is provided. Every department is provided all their assets that they have. And based on that plan, this is when it says you should be replacing these items over the next 10 years. So they're provided that information. They can go in at any time and see the next 15, 20 years. We can go as far into the future as you want, but it all depends. Are you replacing existing stuff or are you tearing down and putting it somewhere else? So you have to know the difference between existing infrastructure with the tangible capital asset reserve fund is being used for versus new projects such as the splash pad. But you also were talking about a center of excellence. Part of that should be part of our asset management plan because it's on the town park, but only that portion that we currently have is really what we're anticipating to replace. So we already know what's to be replaced over the next 20 years based on our existing information. So for the medical clinic you talked about, it was over 20 years. We know that we're getting some information on the roofing. Are we expanding up there? Do we have to remove all the rooftop units? We have been putting monies aside in our general reserves for that particular stuff to be replaced. Again, we have to follow the asset management plan, and that's what we're trying to go forward with. You may remember we say we need to put so much money away, and then that's when we talked about using the OLG monies to make sure that that amount of money that we need to replace every year is put aside for that. And then council also puts money aside for investing in Hanover, which was technically our development charges that we don't charge for right now. It's our internal. So once the development charges come into play, that's where you want the growth to go. All new stuff should be going on that part, not the existing tax base.
I guess I'm wondering, so we're updating our asset management plan right now. Is there a way that our asset management plan can be perhaps more realistic? Like I'm thinking if I was to look at the asset management plan, I believe it would tell me that the fires or the police station can be there for another 20 plus years. Is that not true? Like I believe that police station is not up for renewal right now.
Again, it's based on what each department head has gone in and they're supposed to be doing their condition assessments. So if the police building is not up to par, it should have come up that, hey, this needs to come up in the next 5 years, either replace or return it, right? But you got to remember when it was put in place back in the early 2000s, when the government said you were just looking at a building and said, yeah, it's worth $2 million. You didn't break it down by components, right? But now we have it in components where the roof has to be replaced every 20, 25 years, where the HVAC has to go every 30 to 35 years. So all that stuff is starting to come up to tell us these areas. But again, until you actually look at it, it's like, this is the building that's in place. It should last 40 to 50 years. This building here should last us another 50 some years, but we know the elevator's going to go. We know we have to do another roof. We know we're going to have to do internal stuff for that. But again, we have a 10,000 threshold. Anything over 10,000 becomes capital. Anything under is operations.
Okay, I guess I just hope that when we've paid all this money for a consultant to come and do an updated asset management plan. And I guess I really hope that it's accurate and that it has staff input enough that it's not just based on when the building was built and these factors without actually seeing it, right? Like I would love to see something where it comes forward and we know that in the next 20 years, we've got these major projects. I'm not talking about the smaller things that will get replaced here and there, right? But like real buildings that need to be replaced or just so we can kind of phase this in, right? It seems like we have a very large project with the fire hall that's coming on board. Now we're going right away with the large police station. It would seem unrealistic to me that we're going to do another large build in the next couple of years.
Again, they're working on the asset management plan. It's only as good as the information that's there. So each department takes ownership of their assets and has to give us that detailed information. So what we have in there is based on historical costs. I think Councillor Hawking had asked, what do we use over the last 20 years for financing past projects? Well, they would not do existing capital that they needed to be replaced. When they needed to do this building, they stopped all capital for a couple of years. And basically all their money was funneled here. The same as they did for Heritage Square, the same as they did for there, which meant all our roads were now backing up. So now you got 3 and 4 road sections that are well overdue. And that's why we have this infrastructure gap, because it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Okay, I put it from this pocket, I'll put it over here. Then this one suffers. So you need to have it more balanced. You're not going to be able to do everything. It's just the way it is. So now you look at, does this road, can it last longer? Can this one go? What are the risks if this one goes before this one? Those are the things that we're looking at, right?
Sorry, I've got Councillor Hawking, I've got Andrew, and I've got Sherry, yes?
No, I think, sorry, no.
No. Councillor Hawking, then Andrew.
Thank you, Worship. as you were talking, Christine, I look back on Chair Hambley's comments when he made the presentation. And I just want to make sure that I understand what he was saying based on this report, and it deals with the impact to the annual repayment limit. And if you remember, Peter said quite bluntly, and I think he was being from his financial lens, he thought that Hanover was probably one of the best in its financial stability in Grey and Bruce County. I think I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he said, we are really in excellent shape. And he then talked about the annual debt that we pay. And in this report, you say and I think he mentioned this, that we had the capacity to borrow up to 3.8 million or to pay 3.8 million towards long-term debt, which means we could borrow up to 45 million at 7% over 20 years. So is that what he was referring to, that number, those numbers, when he talked about our financial
Yeah.
ability?
Through you, your worship. That is correct, but that means that you have the capacity to pay that $3.9 million. On page 94 of the report, of the package, I should say, not of the report, but page 94 of the package, you'll notice in the first paragraph after the chart that's there, that table 5, it says that to put all these loans that we're showing for 25, 6, and 27 to be added is a 10.7% levy for those loans alone. If you want to increase the overall loan repayments to the maximum $3.8 million a year to get that you're borrowing the full $45 million. So now you have $45 million debt outstanding, you're paying back 3.8, you're going to have to increase your levy and or user fees by 37%. I don't think that's realistic for the town. They're just saying, he's saying you have the capacity to do that. Yes, we could do that for the wastewater plant, but then your wastewater rates, they were complaining about 25 cents a day. They're not going to be happy with $15, $20 a day. And to go back to that flat fee that you had talked about, a dedicated levy, you're talking about $200 right now per roll number, if you wanted to pay this $8.5 million off, and that's for 20 years on top of their taxes. So it's just another tax that you say, oh, the taxes aren't going up, but here you got to pay a flat fee of this. It's no different than adding another $3 to a bag tag and saying, oh, I took it off the taxes. Now you're going to pay it on the bag tags, those kind of things.
If I may comment, this just shows the necessity for us to increase our revenue through increased assessment so that the town can keep moving forward. And as you know, we've been working on moving towards the east. So it just reiterates that, you know, I don't want to be too negative, but this is quite negative. If we get landlocked, the future councils of the day will be faced with, you've only got so much assessment, your costs keep going up. So you're faced with nothing but diminishing returns or decreasing programs for our services. So I think it's paramount that we work diligently to increase the overall building intern assessment, intern revenue, so we can move this community forward as we have in the past, whatever number of years it is, 100 and some years, is it yet, Sherry? But it always has been. And I'm getting a little historic here. I've been around here a long time, and it's always been look outside the box, make sure you provide the necessary things. Don't get caught into, you know, narrowing your focus and being nervous about moving the municipality forward. So, you know, this is one of many things, but to answer Brandon's comments, back then we would basically, you know, look down the road and this one's coming, this one's coming, this one's coming. And I was unaware that they canceled capital projects of, you know, one part of the town to complete another. I mean, I wasn't wasn't part of that discussion, but, you know, we've had the comment of $300,000 being pulled back. Well, if you look at the police station, it is a capital project. It's not something that we put into the roads. It's not part of the operations. It's actually funding a capital project, long-term. So, thank you.
So let me go to Andrew first. Do you remember what I sort of got?
No, thank you, worship, and I don't want to just regret even jumping in here at all. Just to speak on Councillor Cable's point about the asset management plan, we have completed a pre-construction meeting on that, and we did talk about the asset management plan quite a bit, and it being realistic and specific to Hanover, not just a algorithm that works for every municipality. So I do feel pretty confident that they're going to spit out some very useful data. But like Chris says to other staff all the time, garbage in, garbage out. So it is dependent on the staff, you know, whose capital projects they are to put in the proper information. So I don't know if that needed to be said, but it was the pre-con meeting was pretty straightforward in to say that this intends to be Hanover specific, not just a one-all catch-all.
Chris?
If I could go back, do you remember at budget time, we said for every $100,000 levy, every person that has 100,000 assessment is paying $11.48. So think of it as based on the current rates that they're charging for interest rate. Think of it that every time we borrow $1 million, we're paying back $77,000 to pay for this borrowing, which would equate to about $8.85 for every $100,000. So, you know, everybody wants to say, what's going to affect me at the bottom line, right? So $8.85 a year for every million that we spend for every 100,000 assessment, right? But most people aren't at 100,000. So that 884, if it's 200,000, it's going to be around the $17 a year more for every million that you're borrowing. And to answer your question about the 300,000, that is a one-time payout. You're asking us to use $300,000 a year to cover part of that 650. That's not capital. The capital is the year you're paying for the big project that you're using the 8.5 million. The 300,000 on OLG would be used for 20 years on the operations side to cover those payments, because loan payments and interest are part of operations. They're not capital. They're paying for the capital that you incurred previously because you had no cash or money is available because you're borrowing for it now. I hope I'm explaining that right. Does that make sense to people? You bought a house, you paid $500,000 for the house. Not many of us have $500,000 cash. So your mortgage is now, say, $400,000. You're paying that every month. That's your part of your operations. It's not your capital. Capital would be you're going to do a new roof on that existing house. If that explains it a little better, hopefully.
Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Sherry and Chris, for your report. I always support local policing. I support the location of the new police station. I wish I had a crystal ball to see where local policing is going to be in 20 years. It's a big part of our taxes. We're going to be a lame duck council in a year and a half. I think if we're going to move along with this project, we're going to have to make a decision quickly, because in a year and a half, we won't be making any major decisions. So I think this is very important to our residents, and I think it's very important to this council to move along with this project quickly before we don't have a lot of say, I guess, in what goes on as we become a lame duck and a new council comes in place. Thank you.
So do you have a crystal ball that you know we're going to be lame duck? Thank you for that. Other comments, questions? Right now, what I'm hearing is 3-year phase, not in favor of a dedicated line of the levy, dedicated line on the tax roll. We did not decide whether it was amortized over 20 years or 25 years. There was no discussion about that. But I think it's very difficult to say you're going to pay 1.5 million in interest. That's a huge number. So
if I could, through your worship, that 20-year and 25-year would be at the time you're ready to borrow. That's when you would make that decision I'm just giving you scenarios of what it would be on your levy so that you have an idea. And again, the more money we can get on there and grants and other funding over a 3-year phase-in will make it less borrowing when we actually have to.
So any other comments with that for your phase? Not in favor of a dedicated line on the levy. Okay, so I'm calling the question on that 3-year phase-in. All in favor? It's unanimous. That's carried. Now, here's a big question. Do you want to take a break now or do 2 more reports? Or 1 more report? 2. Want to do 2 or take the break? Keep going. All right. 11.7, we're on page 97. This is report CAO 1524, municipal surplus asset declaration and disposal of recommendations. It's from Sherry Walden, our CAO. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Cable, Councillor Sackle. Sherry.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a fairly straightforward report, so I'll just be very brief in my comments because you have had an opportunity to review it. But as you know, there are times that corporation assets are deemed not needed anymore for various reasons, and that we or you as council have to declare them surplus in order for us to dispose of them accordingly. So this report before you has various items, whether it be vehicle or just general equipment. We have some beam chairs that were previously at the medical clinic, as well as some library equipment that they no longer have a need for or use for. It is recommended that the truck and the beam chairs specifically be sold or be listed through GovDeals, which is an online marketplace for municipal government and educational related items. And anything that's sold through there, GovDeals takes a percentage accordingly as a commission, you might say. Library Board's direction was to sell their assets, so I assume they will be undertaking a process to make individuals aware that those are available for purchase. And upon council declaring these assets surplus, then staff will implement the sale direction and or the scrap metal disposal. The previous parking meters that we have a number of are suggested to go to scrap metal. The estimated value of those items is $2,900 for the town items and $575 for the library items. Any of the funds, the final funds that are received are attributed to the respective department that had the surplus item as such. The report before you is that report CAO-15-24 municipal surplus asset declaration and disposal recommendations be received, that council declare the assets identified in the report as surplus to the requirements of the municipality, and that the surplus assets be disposed of in the manner recommended. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I have one question. There is only one place in town that uses parking meters. Would they want any, or do they have some that maybe don't work and you could give them some?
I'm not aware of anywhere that uses parking meters,
Hospital.
but they have a parking system when you go in, right?
No.
Oh, is there?
Yes.
I don't park there often, obviously. We can see, I would think that like this is technology from our downtown parking meters when we had them many years ago.
And
but-
that's where those came from.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
What
So
is that?
I'm just thinking they might have a couple, 2 or 3 that don't work that well, and if somebody wanted to look through what we have, they could have them, or just scrap metal. So, okay. Any other comments or questions? We're giving up our revenue stream there on those meters, eh? All in favor of report CAO 1524. That is carried. All right, 11.8, we're on page 101 of the package. This is report CAO 1624. The subject is the organizational review RFP from Sherry Walden, our CAO. I need a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor Fleet, Councillor Hawking. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you're aware, an action of our strategic plan is to complete an organizational review. At the June 3rd meeting, there was a information report provided that outlined the scope of work and deliverables for the organizational review. In summary, that review will include an analysis of our organizational structure in relation to our corporate, departmental, and staff responsibilities and service delivery workloads. The review will result in the identification of options and development of recommendations for our corporate structure and staff resources to ensure that we can effectively and efficiently meet current and anticipated service delivery requirements, as well as implement our strategic priorities. The RFP was advertised on Bidingo on the town's website, with 3 proposals being received by the deadline date of July 2nd. One of the submissions was deemed ineligible or rejected because it did not contain all of the required items. The submissions received were from Linton Consulting Services in Elora and KPMG out of Hamilton. These proposals were reviewed. These proposals were evaluated by Melissa, our Human Resources Manager, and myself, based on the criteria that was identified in the RFP, and it included the understanding of the project scope, as well as the deliverables, their schedule, their project team and experience, as well as the cost. It is recommended that the project be awarded to Linton Consulting Services Incorporated. You should be familiar with them as they completed our strategic plan, but they also have experience with organizational reviews and business plans. The proposal by Linton Consulting is the preferred choice because it has an emphasis on building a future state functional model that makes operational sense. Their understanding and approach to completion of the project, their varied input opportunities, including council sessions, staff group sessions, one-to-one conversations, and staff questionnaire, as well as the cost. Based on a project award date of July 16th, they have indicated that it would be late July with work starting and project completion by mid-November. The proposal submitted by Linton Consulting of $43,850 exclusive of HST is within the 2024 allocated budget of $50,000. The link to the strategic plan is open and responsible government. The recommendation is that report CAO-16-24 organizational review RFP be received, and that the project be awarded to Linton Consulting Services Incorporated for a total cost of $43,850 plus HST, and that the mayor and the CAO be authorized to enter into a contract with Linton Consulting Services Incorporated. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to comment that I was really impressed with Linton Consulting Services when we worked on the strat plan. They're very familiar with us. I like the fact that it's not going to take them terribly long to complete the job. So I'm certainly in favor of this.
Thank you. Other comments? I will call the question. All in favor of CAO 1624. That is carried. All right, so let's take a, do you want a 15-minute break or 10? 10-minute break. We'll be back at 6:40. our recess, and we'll start with item 12 on the agenda. Committees of council minutes. The first one, 12.1 on page 105 of the package. We have 3 sets of minutes, so we'll have one motion to cover those 3 sets along with the subcommittee minutes. I need a mover and seconder before we highlight those. Deputy Mayor Dickert and Councillor Hawking. So the first one, as I said, on page 105, 12.1 is the Economic, Tourism and Cultural Development Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Sacco, can you highlight those, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, our meeting was held at the airport for that particular meeting, where the town tour was provided following our meeting. And at the meeting, Amanda Marshall reviewed priority 4 cultural, April Marshall reviewed priority 4 culture and priority 5 tourism of our strategic plan, noting the 101.7, the one entertainment package contest for Hanover summer campaign. Tourism brochures are available for those who wish to pick one up, if anyone's listening at home. As far as updates at that meeting, the Chamber of Commerce, Georgina Barlow announced that their golf tournament is now set for September the 4th. She also noted that the Chamber will support the HIP Entrepreneur Business Competition by providing 3 one-year memberships to qualifying entrepreneurs. As far as Saugeen Connects goes, the Student Startup Program had a great response this year. 51 students will operate 47 businesses, with 13 students participating from Hanover. In terms of correspondence, CBO Andrew Wilkin highlighted that the business park is seeing progress with the Volkswagen starting operations this year. The Kids Play plans to open in early September, and the fire hall is scheduled to be ready by mid-September. Our next meeting is set for September the 18th. And April Marshall noted under new business that this year's Mayor's Breakfast will be held on October the 16th at the Hanover Legion, and that will serve as our October meeting for economic development.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, just raise your hand and we'll keep moving on. We have 12.1.1. This is the Heritage Subcommittee minutes, and Councillor Sacco, again, please highlight.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Heritage Subcommittee minutes are from April the 18th. Al Morrow provided a mystery photo of the Knechtel family. Olympic Torch Run 2009 framed posters and a Hanover Inn novelty $1 bill were donated to the Heritage Committee. The Hanover Heritage Building Tour is still under discussion. It was recommended that a volunteer tour guide be with each group. And lastly, Jason Ron shared that they are obtaining a quote for a cleaning of the town clock tower.
Thank you. And the next set of minutes from May 16th, again, the Heritage Subcommittee minutes. Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Al Morrow provided a mystery photo from the 1940s featuring a group of young men post-World War II. Donations this month included a railway spike from the Lake Rosalind Railway and unique bricks with pictures or messages called talking bricks, manufactured in a Hanover brickyard. The Heritage Building Tour is now set for September the 21st, so save the date.
And if you would like to do the final set for your highlights, cultural roundtable.
I'll be happy to do that, Your Worship. So Culture Days, April Marshall updated the committee on discussions with the library about the Sounds of Hanover concert. I believe Carolyn referenced it today, which is being produced with John Gardner, Jamie Warren, Larry Mercy, and Richard Knechtel. And this will be happening in coordination with Culture Days. Pat Butler has been in discussion with the Paramount Theatre in order to feature our historic theater and to show a movie possibly for the public during Culture Days as well. Under updates, the library hanging basket sale was a tremendous success. In terms of the Hanover Community Players, there was an overwhelming interest for the Sound of Music auditions. In terms of the Saugeen artists, Bev Morgan highlighted that the Quick Paint event planned for July the 27th in coordination with Music in the Square and the Eat Well Market is going ahead. And finally, April Marshall noted that she is advancing with the Driftscape app to promote our tourism and cultural assets, events, stories, and tours. Are there any questions?
Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Item 12.2, this is on page 115. It is the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Committee met on June the 26th. We started with a delegation from Maryland Group of the Hanover District Skating Club, who gave a presentation to the committee members regarding the club's successes, growth, challenges, and needs. Maryland highlighted that they had 58 skaters in the last season. And she also noted that the Build Back Better assistance strategy was greatly appreciated by their club, and it certainly helped them to weather COVID and to rebuild afterwards. So she certainly was appreciative of that. As far as updates, we talked about the boiler replacement project. So the contractor has begun to install the double doors on the south wall of the boiler room. At the Kinsman Park Out and Playground, there were some drainage issues noted in the spring, and so that section of tile has been replaced and things seem to be back to normal. We might notice that the picnic tables that were at our newly installed playgrounds at Kinsman and 4th Street Crescent Parks have both been replaced under warranty. And we'd also note that summer camps are alive and well at the P&H Center, and registration was very strong this year. Only 4 spots remaining in the Hanover Kids Camp for the whole summer. So certainly a great uptake in summer camp programming with the town of Hanover. I think that's all that I had to report, Your Worship, but certainly if there is anything else, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any, so we'll move on. 12.2.1 is the Splash Pad Development Ad Hoc Committee minutes. Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just looking at the items here for information is I'd like to highlight this for all our citizens. I believe they're going out in mass mailings from the town staff in water bills, I believe. And I think now that both sides of the town have been served through the water bills. So please give your consideration. I'm very pleased to announce we have pierced the $200,000 mark, and we're well on our way to meeting our goal of $300,000 for fundraising. We have set a time limit because we want to be included in the budget discussions for next year. So we hope to have reached our goal by October the 1st. Disappointing turnout on the Parks and Recreation Culture Information Night. And I noted in the minutes from April's group that Steve White made a comment too with when the chief made a presentation at the library. And I don't know what the answer is to get more people to come out, but there was a lot of good information. Sherry gave an excellent update on the trails, and Marion gave an update on the splash pad. We had a great response on Canada Day. We had a tent set up by community members, great location, and lots of positive feedback. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any, so we'll continue. Item 12.3 is the Age Friendly Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Worship. Age Friendly met Monday, June 17th. I'll just go over some of the highlights here. We had a special guest. We had Mayor Sue Patterson provide a presentation to the committee members about the town of Hanover and completed projects and upcoming projects. Seniors Community Grant. Brandon had no update on the application for the 2024-25 Senior Community Grant at this time. Committee members enjoyed having delegations from Chris Knoll and Mayor Patterson, and is interesting to hear from our chief librarian at a future meeting. And that's all I have to report in Age Friendly. I take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised. So the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Dickert and seconded by Councillor Hawking is to receive the information and approve the recommendations contained in those minutes that were just highlighted. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item 13 is bylaws. We have 4 bylaws. I need a mover and seconder before I ask the clerk for the intent of the bylaws. Councillor Sackle and Councillor Cable. Vicky?
Bylaw 3309-24 is a bylaw of the town of Hanover to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the town of Hanover at its regular meeting held on June 17th, 2024. Bylaw 3310-24 is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario on the Canada Community Building Fund. Bylaw 3311-24 is a bylaw to authorize the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for temporary and long-term financing of one or more capital works of the town of Hanover pursuant to a floating rate capital loan made available by Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation. And bylaw 3312-24 is a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2912-15 as amended.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Sackle, seconded by Councillor Cable, that bylaw numbers 3309-24 through to 3312-24 be introduced and that they be taken as read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and inserted in the bylaw book. Is there any further discussion with those bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Item 14, we do not have any correspondence requiring action, so we'll move on to item 15, reports and correspondence for information. 15.1 on page 163 of the package is report PB 1924. It is the Municipal Law Enforcement Quarterly Report. It is from Ken Campbell, our Municipal Law Enforcement Officer, and Andrew Wilkin will be highlighting that report. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. In front of you is the chart of calls for the second quarter and first quarter included for 2023. As you can see, and as is typical, the second quarter, the spring, start of summer, we're seeing a lot more clean yards complaints. Animal control calls seem to be which feel like at an all-time high for animals running at large and calls like that. We've been focusing on our downtown parking, ensuring that there are not vehicles parked there beyond the allotted timelines, and other inquiries are in there as well, which typically are landlord-tenant disputes, which we try to stay out of, but we do go there in an attempt to help rectify a situation. Some encampment type of calls or complaints, neighborly disputes, those type of things are typically outlined in our other inquiries. So yeah, online to have more calls this year than last year again. And I'll answer any questions. The recommendation is that report PB 19-24 Municipal Law Enforcement Quarterly Report be received for information. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions for Andrew? All right, we'll move on. 15.2 is report PB 2024 Site Plan Control Agreement for Teeswater Concrete from Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO, and this is for information. Andrew.
Thank you again, Your Worship. In 2023, Teeswater Concrete 2021 LTD purchased and constructed a concrete batch plant on Gray Road 28, call number 341076. At that time, when they constructed it, you may or may not recall, it was really phase one of a larger expansion that they were going to be doing up there. Essentially, the initial build was just to get them operating within the town. That property received a final occupancy on that original batch plan in September of 2023, and has been operating since that time. On May 16th, 2024, Aaron Armstrong of Teeswater Concrete approached the town to discuss expanding their concrete operation. The proposal was to increase the building by approximately 3,000 square feet. This additional area is required and is mainly directed at being able to provide winter heat to their concrete facility. As it stands now, they cannot provide winter heat within their concrete. Therefore, they're limited to their concrete deliveries to certain types of projects beyond mid-November, let's say, depending on the temperature. The expansion proposes to the rear of the existing facility, and it would allow the plant, as I said, to operate on a more year-round basis. On June 25th, 2024, Teeswater Concrete entered into a site plan control agreement with the town to construct this additional square footage. At the time of this report, the building permit application has since been received, and it is currently in the review process. It is anticipated that construction will commence this summer and completion hopefully done before winter heat would kick in this coming winter. There are no financial implications to this report. The link to the strategic plan is balanced growth, and the recommendation is that report PB 20-24 site plan control agreement for Teeswater Concrete 2021 LTD 341076 Gray Road 28 be received for information.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Andrew. 15.3, we're on page 175 of the package. Report CAO 1724. The subject is the strategic plan 2023 to 2027 progress update. It's from our CAO, Sherry Walden. Sherry?
Thank you, Your Worship. So our strategic plan that was adopted last August 2023, included 56 actions within the 5 goal statements. And those who are listening at home, you'll hear staff refer to the report link and the various report links and the goals. And those are our goal statements accordingly. This update is provided to council and indicates that we are in progress and or completed on almost 60% of our actions. So some of those highlights include, from a completed standpoint, the Neighborhood Park renewal and improved website, as well as the initiation of the Mayor's Breakfast. And some of the highlights from a progress perspective, and again, they're at various stages of progress, but we have the new fire hall construction, as well as funding applications, the initiation of our capital assets update, development charges process, and organizational review. Our new water tower environmental assessment is at a notice of completion stage, and the design is in process. It is expected probably that tender will come forward in September of this year. Our public police station review committee report's been received by council. Splash Pad fundraising campaign is well in progress, as Councillor Hawking noted earlier in that minutes review. Our Launchpad Skills Training and Technology Center memorandum of understanding has been confirmed. The food cycler pilot implemented as an organics option has been, and we look forward to a fall program update from that survey of that program. And our Hanover Innovative People Program, or our HIP program, Retention and Attraction Campaigns, apprentice videos, summer radio campaign, and updated attractions publication have been implemented. So again, I recall last year when we were adopting the strategic plan saying the number of actions is aggressive. Meaning it aggressive in a positive term. There's a lot of them. But, you know, many thanks to our staff team and council's commitment to our strategic priorities. We've been able to make good progress in those strategic actions. So there's no financial implications for this report. The progress tracker is attached and provides more details as such. And again, this report CAO-17-24 Strategic Plan 2023 to 2027 Progress Update is be received for information. So I'm happy to answer any questions or clarifications you may have.
Thank you, Sherry. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. The tracker is a great option for us to be able to see what our strengths are and going forward, and for people to watch the new things that we have coming up. The healthy and welcoming community is where I'm seeing a bit of a lag in the environmental advisory committee, tree canopy, and those sort of things. That particular goal, we seem to be falling a little behind in. And so I'm wondering if we need to have committees set up to sort of lead or guide or help with that particular goal.
So from an environmental, so that's on page 182. I just want to make sure, Counselor Hudson, I'm on the same page as you, page 182. So the Environmental Advisory Committee, that certainly is something that we can move forward with fairly quickly. It is something where it's more around where do we have the staff lead time? Who's the staff lead for that? And where do they have the time based on some of their other priorities to make that commitment to that project? From a tree canopy perspective, I would say that again, we have I don't want to say we have a tree canopy, but we do have a shade bylaw, as I recall, or a shade policy as such, and it may just be a matter of relooking at some of those accordingly.
Andrew?
Through your worship, one other item in terms of the tree canopy, as we work through our updating of our official plan, there will be some verbiage in there about tree canopy and tree planting and that type of thing will be covered in our official plan, which will help bring that percentage up a little bit as well.
Other comments? Counselor Cable?
Thank you, Worship. Just wondering, Andrew, so when you talk about requirements in the official plan, is that where you could mandate something like every new house will have a tree on the lot? Like, would that be something that could be in the official plan?
Through your worship, yeah, the official plan essentially is the guideline. Where that would be is where it could be mandated is in the subdivision agreement itself and how it's worded in there. But yes, the official plan would dictate how we address other items. So I would say specifically it would be updated in a subdivision agreement, whether that's just kind of our default agreement being updated to incorporate what our new official plan states. I would say that that would have a little more teeth to actually say that has to be done. Our official plan is, you know, kind of like a roadmap and a design to get to those next steps.
Excellent, thank you. And if I can ask one more, this is on page 185 in Healthy and Welcoming Community. Action 2.3, it says encouraging a greater mix of housing options for residents of all ages and income levels. And for B, it says that staff are working with county and developers towards a housing needs assessment. What is that?
I'm actually, through you, your worship, going to refer that one to Andrew because he's involved with that Grey County work.
Yeah, thank you. A housing needs assessment is essentially a document or a review of, you know, what we have in town now, what we're lacking in, whether that's, you know, probably like most communities our size, affordable housing. But it'll start to give us a threshold and an understanding of where we're lacking and what we need. A housing needs assessment is potentially important as we apply for certain funding options for housing expansion. Housing accelerator funding was an announcement a little while ago, and there was a requirement for a housing needs assessment to be a part of any applications for that. So while not overly specific, as you know, the town is not, we don't develop specifically, but to understand what we're lacking and what we're not might help us mold some of our other policies to help try to fill in those gaps where we can.
Excellent, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on. Item 15.4, this is the library board meeting minutes. Counselor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. The library board met on Wednesday, May the 15th at 6:30. The library is proceeding with the space needs report in order to provide accurate information to the town with the upcoming development charges bylaw and Town of Hanover strategic plan item investigating the cost of new library in Hanover Public Library. There will be a slight delay in the start date as suggested. The library is doing a lot of outreach into the community this year as well. They were just currently at the carnival, actually at the Hope Community Church. They've done a great deal of participation in the Canada Day and the Welcoming Newcomers Day as well. So they're making a presence known in the public. On June the 4th, the board had the 6-month CEO review with Carolyn. And a lot of a lot of this actually Carolyn spoke on tonight regarding, the number of library cards, et cetera. We're currently at our spending percentile for the year. And just as a point of interest, in January, the provincial government had suggested that libraries should have a Service Ontario in their facilities as a dedicated location. And our comment was that we don't have, at this time, have the space in order to be able to do that. It's a great idea to have something back in our town, but unfortunately, it's just not feasible currently. I do want to also make mention to regarding the trivia night that we did on June the 21st. It was very, very successful, and we had age range from 20 years old to 87. So it was a good proportion of the community. We ended up with 86 people there, and funds raised were 1,300 plus. So it was a good night, and good to have some community outreach and perspective from everyone that was there. So it was a good time.
Very good. I don't see any hands. Item 15.5 is the Hanover Police Services Board meeting minutes from June the 17th, which I will highlight. There was an OAPSB Spring Conference, which is the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, at Blue Mountain Resort. A speaker on recruitment was very good and emphasized the importance of marketing a police service on the internet to attract recruits and using technology to appeal to younger people. Video tours were mentioned as a way to promote a location as a destination, and efforts to identify job opportunities for spouses. And that is not just only for the police, it's for doctors and dentists and anyone that's looking to recruit. You need to look after the spouse and make sure that that person has employment if they so wish. Because if you can keep your partner here, you will keep your employee here. Special constables are now required to undergo prescribed training. They always had to have training, but now it's prescribed, which is through the ministry. And the Hanover Police Service does not have that, but the chief is in discussions with the Brantford Police Service, which is working on having a course available. And then I just wanted to highlight the community events. On June, starting at the beginning of June, the Hanover Police Service members participated at the Hanover Lions Club Kids Fishing Derby and provided a sponsorship for the event, and it was well attended with a lot of smiles all around. Later in the month, the chief participated in Coffee with a Cop, hosted by the library, with discussions on fraud prevention, traffic issues, drugs, and the trends in crime. Chief of the Day contest winners, Hannah Kingston and Gavin Castra-Penner, joined the police for the day, and it was very well received by the community, the participating youths, and their families. They're going to do it again. Everyone enjoyed it. And the service also participated in the torch run that stopped in Hanover during their runs across Grey Bruce this was on June the 13th. And a thank you to Grants Independent for hosting with donation and snacks and drinks for all participants. And then on June the 15th, you may have heard it in the news, the Hanover Police Service participated in a truck convoy in Chesley for a youth with Down syndrome who was promised by his dad that when he turned 12, he would take him in his truck for a ride. Unfortunately, the father passed away and the truck ride never happened. Local truckers organized the convoy that was led by the OPP, and Hanover Police Service followed. And the young lad, Merrick, was all smiles as they drove him around the country block outside of Chesley. Merrick is a student at JDSS in Hanover. Open to any questions if there are any. All right, moving on, item 15.6. This is the Downtown Improvement Area meeting minutes. Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. The DIA met on Thursday, May 16th. I'll just go over some of the highlights. April Marshall, Economic Development Manager for the town, shared more details on Driftscape app touched on in November. The town has a summer student and they're moving forward with this program with a 2-year commitment. I'll just go on to downtown promotions, June, July, August, Music in the Square. The fall market's happening September is the 21st. October 28th, Pumpkin Carving Challenge. November, Holiday Shop and Win. Tentative run dates, November 18th to December 14th. December 6th, lighting of the square market on December 7th, and parade. We'll be discussing the lighting of the square at a meeting when we get back after the holidays. And that's all I have to report for the DIA.
Thank you. Again, no hands. We'll move on. Item 15.7 is the Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission meeting minutes. Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had the First Responders Day and it was a great success. As noted in the minutes, MP Ben Lobb and MPP Rick Byers attended. So when I had them alone, I made a push for funding from the provincial and federal government for municipal airports. We'll see what happens. I'd like to carry on there with it's noted that we have a commercial tenant out there. Amazon has joined our facility and is privately renting a hangar for as a distribution warehouse. And finally, we talked about Kids Fly event on June the 22nd, which exceeded all expectations. Last year we had about 110. This on June the 22nd we had 175. So it was well appreciated by parents and the children. And thanks to the COPA for giving their time and their planes to make this event such a success. We talked a bit about new business under a bylaw number 2, which is transaction of business and affairs of the Saugeen Municipal Airport. And I think that's pretty well it. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Okay, item 15.8, this is page 213. This is an AMO policy, which is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. This is a paper about homelessness encampments. And it states that municipal governments are at the front lines of the homelessness crisis without the resources or tools to support our residents and communities. AMO is asking the provincial and federal governments to work collaboratively with each other and with municipalities. These are complex issues that require comprehensive responses from all orders of government working together. It's a good policy if people want to take the opportunity to read it. It's very good. Item 15.9 is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning Committee presentation, and Councillor Sackle is going to highlight that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm the council rep on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning Advisory Committee, and it's a very large group, so much so that we have to meet virtually on Zoom, and we meet quarterly. But I want to tell you who's on the steering committee. Alexis Cook is our coordinator, Anne-Marie Shaw with Community Services in Grey County, Tina Metcalf from Human Services in Bruce County, Jane Hartley from Victim Services, Bruce Grey, Keegan Wilson, who's an inspector with South Bruce OPP, and Jason Wepler from Grey Bruce Health Unit. So for those of you not familiar with this committee, you can see all the background. I think that's really important to say. You've all looked at it on council, but in terms of people at home, let's just say that it's important that we create a welcoming community. Sorry, Tanya, I forgot to let you know I'm on 233. It's important that we create a welcoming community where problems are solved before they happen and where different professionals and community members come together to help people now and in the future. So that statement connects with the steering committee members that I identified a moment ago. Next slide. The Ontario framework, I think, is really important. I kind of call this a bullseye. So in the middle, when something happens, you have to determine how it's going to be handled. And the risk intervention is your yellow. The prevention is the blue, where we're trying to identify the risk. And the social development in green is promoting and maintaining community safety and well-being. So the more we know, the better we can respond to a situation. Next slide. And again, this walks you through the process that would take from the moment that we have the incident to the eventual evaluation and outcome. Next slide is the action tables. So on our last meeting, we go through the action tables and they're updated. So under housing and homelessness, we are spoken to from Josh Gibson, the Homelessness Response Steering Committee. And there's a little bit of information on each of these action tables as we go through the slideshow. So I'll just comment that poverty and income looks at Jill Umbach from the Bruce Gray Poverty Task Force. The mental health action table is handled by Scott McKay from the Mental Health and Addictions Networking Table. The addictions and substance abuse or use rather is Kelsey Mighton Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy. And finally, the crime action table, prevention table is Alexis Cook from the Crime Prevention Action Table Group. So under housing and homelessness, you can see that they're looking at a guide, the real cost of it, development of an encampment referral process, and a by name referral and prioritization update. Under poverty and income, we're looking at the Grey Bruce Community Volunteer Income Tax Program Network Gathering, redesign of the Poverty Task Force website to feature more ways for the public and municipalities to be engaged. So they're working one-on-one with people to help them figure out their finances and do their taxes. Mental health. Current initiatives, they're launching a new housing and treatment program. They're working with Ontario Health Team Mental Health Envisioning Day outcomes. They're reviewing data from the network table members for action planning, and they're developing a Grey Bruce MH&A scorecard. Substance use and addictions. They're looking at an in-kind coordinator support from Grey Bruce Public Health. Currently, they're drafting a new strategic plan, and they're determining actions to address over the next several years. Crime prevention, there are 4 identified priorities: intimate partner and gender-based violence, human trafficking and drug trafficking, and road safety. Currently, they're doing a survey for youth, road, and internet safety. It started in June. It continues to September, if you'd like to look into that. They're looking again at cannabis and driving, short-term rental human trafficking resource, a community road safety survey, and data collection. Now, the STAR situation, STAR stands for, next slide, sorry, Tanya, stands for a situation table is a meeting of police services, social services, and other community agencies who use their combined expertise to work together to reduce the chance that someone will experience harm from a combination of risk factors that heighten the chances of imminent victimization. So again, that same target that we saw a moment ago. And on the next slide, it refers to AER, acutely elevated risk, something that is negatively affecting the health or safety of an individual, maybe a family, perhaps a group or a place where there's a high probability of imminent and significant harm to someone or to others. Next slide. So the STAR results, based on what you've just heard, in 2023, there were 29 situations, 25 met the definition of AER, 68% had their AER lowered, which is great, and 23 individuals had their AER lowered. In 2024, we have 12 situations. Of course, we're only halfway through the year. That makes sense. 10 met the AER definition. 8 out of the 10 cases were closed with 88% AER lowered. That's wonderful. And 55 individuals had AER lowered. Next slide. This one's a little bit more personal and maybe even more understandable for us. Client X called 911 53 times. Can you imagine being those police officers and getting that address and having to go 53 times to the same home? The EMS, same thing. 9 out of 53 situations, and the cost is $4,161. So the total cost for the police and EMS was $16,618 and change. But 2.5 months following the STAR intervention program that we just looked at, the client X called 911 only 6 times, and EMS didn't have to deal with it at all. Police dealt with it 6 times, total cost $1,410. That's a savings of over $15,000. So that tells you the STAR program is definitely the way to go. The next slide, objectives have been achieved. I don't think I'm going to go through all of that, but let's look at the next slide with 2025. They're relaunching the Community Wellbeing Survey. They're reviewing and revising the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. They're looking at sustaining long-term funding. They're launching a STAR dashboard for the public. And I think I'm going to end with just something I learned, and maybe you're familiar with it, but at our last meeting in June, Lisa Alguire from Public Health, she works for Grey Bruce Public Health. She provided an in-depth overview of home takeovers. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but I am not, or it wasn't until then. So someone comes into your home, they're not necessarily living at your home, but then they take over. They come into your home and they refuse to leave. And that is a serious issue that's going on in Grey and Bruce counties. Are there any questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very good. That was interesting. Okay, next item, 15.10, the Grey County Council and Committee of the Whole highlights. Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. During our meeting, Councillor Body, who is the mayor of Owen Sound, presented his motion to have the county investigate court security cost options, as the city currently provides this service at a cost of $236,000 to the taxpayers. As a service that covers many Grey County municipalities. However, Hanover and West Grey, their court cases go to Walkerton. So it, in enough case, Brockton pays for the court security there. So the intent of this investigation is to see, what the economic benefits are to having the courthouse in your municipality and how that balances against what it costs for the police security. So there will be a report coming forward with regards to that in the future. On our consent agenda, we received several items from information, and one of them was the Town of Hanover letter asking for the province to institute province-wide ride-share legislation so that it would help in promoting that service. And we also had an update on the Tri-County Green Development Standards and the program and the Green Economy Hub pilot. The Tri-County is Simcoe, Grey, and Wellington, I believe, and they're working on green development standards that could or could not be imposed on the official plan and development that's going to be happening. And the Green Economy pilot is just looking at the opportunities that exist within the green industry and trying to make sure that we're capturing those opportunities within those tri-county areas. We also received the Community Safety Wellbeing Update, which Councillor Sackle has just done a great job of presenting there. It was certainly a lot of good information, so thank you for your sharing of those details. And Council approved a sponsorship agreement for a 10-year naming rights of the theater at Grey Roots Museum. Wilden Investments will contribute $50,000 to Grey Roots over the next 5 years, and the theater will be known as the Thomas Wilden Theater through the year 2034. And those are my comments.
Very good. All right, item 16 is councillor and staff updates. as in good news and celebrations. Deputy Mayor Dickert will give you the opportunity to start first, if you have any.
Just two brief ones. Just like to congratulate Saugeen Hospice on another successful golf fundraiser with over $65,000 raised. It was a fun event to support. And I just also want to congratulate the staff here at the town for the great job they did on the Canada Day event. Well attended and lots of smiles and happy faces there. So congratulations and thank you to them as well.
Any other good news and celebrations? Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I had my first ride in an electric car. I had not been in one before. Had a couple come up to visit us a few weeks ago. And I really was happy to see that we went to Music in the Square and they were able to charge their car while we were there. And then we went to the Raceway and they charged their car over there. And I was pretty proud of the fact that, you know, my city friends saw that they were able to charge their car at all. So that was wonderful. I'd also like to I guess, follow up on what Deputy Mayor Dickert said concerning Canada Day. I had an opportunity to speak to a couple who were from out of town and they came in and they said, so where do we pay? And I looked at them and I said, oh, there's no payment. This is all for you to enjoy. Wow, they couldn't believe it. So that was wonderful. And lastly, just want to remind everyone that Wednesday, July 17th is Tim Hortons Camp Day. I know I'm going to be greeting some of the public, so I hope to see you. Come on out to Tim Hortons.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to put a shout out to the community for the support that they provided at the Canada Day breakfast at the Curling Club. It all got pulled together really quickly. And with the support of the community and the fabulous volunteers that we had, the event was a great success and added a little bit to the Canada Day celebrations as well.
Councillor Cabo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Following up on Councillor Hudson's earlier comment about the library trivia night, it really was a fantastic event. So it was great to see so many people that came out to that fundraiser. Certainly something that was great to see young people and all ages represented. Also a reminder that the 160th Hanover Fair is coming up quite quickly. So it's happening on Saturday, August the 10th and Sunday, August the 11th. The fair committee is still looking for volunteers, and so you can contact Doreen Schultz if you're interested in volunteering. We're looking for volunteers to help out with specific tasks, so you're not necessarily having to organize an event, but just looking out for some helping hands for the fair. You can contact Doreen at secretary-treasurer@hbbas.org, or you can also visit hanoverfair.ca.
Thank you. Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just touching on Canada Day, it was a great day, and I just want to congratulate Henry and Barb Lansing as community buildings, well deserved. So it was just a great day all around. So thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll move on. Item 17, planning and other meetings. Of course, these meetings are listed on this agenda and on our website. There is one change, 17.6. The Hanover Police Service Board will not be meeting in August. The next meeting will be in September. Dates to remember and announcements. The Finance Committee meeting is Monday, July 22nd, a week from today at 4 p.m. The next regular council meeting is August 12th at 4 p.m. and the next committee of the whole meeting is September 3rd at 4 p.m. Councillor Hawking.
The Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission will not be meeting in July.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask, are there any notices of motion? Councillor Hudson. Oh.
The Hanover Public Library Board isn't meeting in July either.
We got that. So we have 3 not meeting. Anyone else not meeting in? But everyone that isn't meeting is going to attend other meetings just as a guest, maybe, and see what's going on. So, all right, I'm going to ask, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we do not have a closed meeting, but I need a mover and seconder to adjourn at 7:29. Councillor Sackle, Deputy Mayor Dickert, all in favor? That is carried. Good meeting. Thank you.